It's gone!
His second home run of the Classic.
Oh, wow!
And the big bats for the Netherlands doing the damage.
That's gone. And the Netherlands has now hit 4 of these. And the Netherlands wins it. Cuba is eliminated.
Back at Ty Jung's Intercontinental Baseball Stadium, game number 1 of the 2023 World Baseball Classic just about set to begin as Cuba and the Netherlands square off in the first WBC game in 6 years. Alongside Ryan Rowland-Smith, my name is Tyler Mon. We're going to get a look at lineups and this starting pitcher today for the Kingdom of the Netherlands as Roel Santos steps into the batter's box. And this manager, Armando Johnson, who we got a chance to talk to yesterday, so gracious with his time, told us a lot about this team. This is potentially a watershed, transformative moment for Cuban baseball, adding big leaguer to their roster for the first time.
Yeah, one of the biggest storylines. We talked about in the opening, obviously, Yoan Moncada and Luis Robert Jr. coming back during their major league careers. We have never seen that before. Armando Johnson was very transparent about how he felt about that. Such a positive thing. Man, he has got a squad here in Cuba.
A guy who managed for a couple of decades in the Cuban National Series and won almost 800 games as the first pitch of the 2023 World Baseball Classic is in for ball 1, and we are underway at 12:08 in the afternoon here in Taiwan. Roel Santos, a guy who, as of his most recent baseball stops, has been playing in Mexico the last couple of years. He's played for Tabasco the last 2 summer seasons in the Mexican League. In the last 2 winter seasons, he's been with Navajoa and Hermosillo. And he takes ball 2 up high from the right-handed starting pitcher, Tom DeBlock.
Yeah, with Tom DeBlock, already we're seeing that good velocity. It's kind of that question mark. Is he going to be the same guy when he was that prospect? His time with the Detroit Tigers system. That's going to be that big question mark, and something we're going to talk a lot about is that pitching from Team Netherlands. We talked about the infield, obviously, the MLB talent, but what can they do on the pitching side?
And he's right back into the count now at 2 balls and 2 strikes on Roel Santos. Roel, this most recent Winter League season, 58 games with the Naranjeros and Hermosillo in the Mexican Pacific Winter League. That's some pretty good numbers. He hit 303, an OPS of 782, but how about his summer numbers for Tabasco? Batted .411 in 68 games with an 1100 OPS. And the Mexican League is no slouch. It's not as though he was going in playing against extremely inexperienced competition. That's just really, really good work. And he draws a leadoff walk. Starting lineup looks like this for Armando Johnson's Cuba squad, led off by Santos with that walk. We talked about Yoan Moncada and Luis Robert. We didn't even mention Yoenis Cespedes, but Ryan, one big note, no Alfredo Despaigne today. The all-time WBC leader in home runs experienced some discomfort swinging prior to the game, held him out of the lineup. He will not play today.
Yeah, you mentioned Despaigne, big loss for this Cuban team in the middle of that lineup. But Yoenis Cespedes, welcome back to the stage. A lot of viewers back in the United States tuning in right now, excited to watch the 2-time Home Run Derby champion back on the stage.
It is going to be fascinating to see just what Yoenis Cespedes brings to the table for this Cuba squad as Yoan Moncada takes his first hacks of the World Baseball Classic, a guy who at one time in his career, the consensus top prospect in baseball. He's put together some really good time with the Chicago White Sox, but similarly to what you mentioned with Luis Robert, health, coming back from injury, being effective in 2023, this has the potential to be a springboard to that.
Yeah, it really does. And you mentioned the health factor of it. Look, a guy like Yoan Moncada, who is an established major league player, is an everyday player, traveling across the Pacific Ocean to represent Cuba, tells you everything you need to know in regards to his health, where he is at. There is no way he would not be 100. If he was not 100%, he'd still be in camp right now. So, special moment to see him wearing that Cuba across the front of the chest.
There is the right-handed starter, Tom DeBlock, for the Netherlands. And Ryan, he's missing up high a lot early, which means potentially some nerves in the first handful of batters that he's facing today in his first WBC start since 2017.
100%. You have to factor in nerves in this situation. First time in 6 years being on this stage. He did play some professional baseball back in the day, but you look at that scouting report. He's showing the good velocity, but you are going to have to get yourself in good counts to beat this Cuban offense.
So back-to-back walks to lead off this game for Cuba. Roel Santos and Yohan Moncada aboard at second and first, respectively. And now you get into the teeth of this lineup, and Luis Robert, and for Tom DeBlock, already a hole to dig out of.
Yeah, and you see that fastball averages 91, 92, can show the 94. That was the question mark, Tyler. With a guy like this who, again, hasn't been on this stage, are you going to see that same velocity? Some of these players age a little bit, and for Team Netherlands, look, we talk about the infield a lot. Can the pitching get it done? And another thing that we are going to talk a ton about in these first couple days as we introduce the World Baseball Classic is the pitch limitations, some of the pitch counts. That's going to play into this extremely big, especially when you're not throwing strikes early in the first inning.
So first and second, nobody out for Luis Robert Jr. He made it known this offseason. That's the full name going into 2023. And the first pitch on the way to him is there for strike one. That home plate umpire is Nick Lentz out of Major League Baseball. Serge Makuchetev from France is our third base umpire today. Dan Iasonia from the big leagues is out at second. And Shoji Arusumi from Nippon Professional Baseball in Japan is the umpire at first. Big cut and miss from Robert, and it's 0-2.
See him getting back in the count, couple breaking balls. Have to get that fastball over, but this is a good sign. Get a good 0-2 count. You just want to get that first out of the way when you're back wearing that country across the chest.
And you look at those numbers from last year and just how great Luis Robert was in the start of 2022, and then really tailed off, battled health-wise in the second half of the season. But again, an extremely young, wildly talented player who's got a lot in front of him this year. Behind in the count now, 1-2. As the block comes set on this gorgeous Wednesday afternoon here in Taichung. The 1-2, sky foul.
Yeah, you mentioned some of those second half numbers. We hear a lot about Luis Robert Jr., obviously the runner-up, rookie of the year in that shortened 2020 season behind Mariners' Kyle Lewis. He gets off to some hot starts over the years, but just trying to finish, trying to stay healthy and get through that second half of the season.
The block trying to record an all-important first out here in the top of one. 1-2 pitch, and got him on the off-speed. And Robert gone on strike, so the back-to-back walks, and the block able to fight back without number one.
And that was a hanging slider. Kind of got away with one there, but you will take it in this situation. It's 12 o'clock in the middle of the day. You're back on this stage. You get that first one out of the way, and then you just settle in, start throwing some strikes.
And here comes one of the most enigmatic baseball players of the last decade in Yoenis Cespedes, who most recently, as you can see, played in the Dominican Winter League for Águilas this, I guess, current offseason still. I know we're into spring training, but he is very freshly removed from those numbers in the Dominican Winter League. We have not seen, as hard as this is to believe, we have not seen Yoenis Cespedes play a full major league season, really, since 2016 when he was with the Mets. He played 132 games that year. Since then, 127 completely over 2017, 2018, and 2020, if my math is correct. Does not feel like it was that long ago.
No, it does not at all, especially some of those home run derby appearances, putting on a show. Hey, he put on a show yesterday. We got a chance to watch him take batting practice, and obviously the question mark is for some of these aging players, do they still have that lightning in the bat? Man, he was putting on a show, putting balls on the rooftops yesterday during that practice session.
In there at the knees, and Cespedes thought he was ahead in the count at 2-1, and instead it's 1-2.
You see the block going to that breaking ball a ton here early. It's that one pitch he has a feel for to get back in counts.
DeBlock walked the first two he faced. Here comes another two-strike offer. That's away. 2 balls and 2 strikes.
Again, take a look at that pitch count already in the first inning. 20 pitches. Something you're going to have to manage. Doesn't matter how deep your pitching staff is.
That's the catcher Lorenzo Quintana in the 5 spot in the on-deck circle. A spot that probably would have been Alfredo Despaigne, or Despaigne would have been his cleanup hitter, but held out of the lineup today as Cespedes gets a piece to stay alive on 2-2.
Still rocking that neon green arm sleeve. Love it.
I'm rubbing off on you. I was gonna make that comment, and I thought you were gonna think like, oh, you're already going to the uniform stuff.
I mean, you can't miss it. Look at it. I love it.
2-2 pitch on the way. Foul up the third base side. The block laboring here in the first as the pitch counts are such a big point of emphasis. He's at 22 already. 65 is the limit in this opening round. Big first inning pitches coming up from Tom DeBlock. Another 2-2 to Cespedes. 3 balls and 2 strikes. Tom DeBlock, this is not a new position for him as we take a look at those pitcher rest restrictions. He is 7 pitches away now from already needing to be out tomorrow. Now, granted, he's the starter today. We wouldn't anticipate seeing him tomorrow, but we're going to see some really interesting managing of pitching staffs, whether it's guys who will go short bursts to start games who can be brought back that next day. And low and away, Cespedes works the walk. Got to look at this defensive alignment behind Tom DeBlock, and you know, you get anything on the ground, you're going to feel pretty confident with the guys behind you if you're this right-handed starter.
Yeah, you have gold gloves all over that infield. We talked about this in the open. This is the big highlight for this. The big strength to this Netherlands team is that infield. A lot of Major League talent. Obviously, Xander Bogaerts makes the job at shortstop. Jonathan Scope, second base. Dieter Gregorius and Anthony Simmons. Line behind Tom DeBlock. The big question is, can Tom DeBlock get some weak contact, get himself out of this inning? Already, the wheels are starting to turn in that dugout for the Netherlands. Their pitching staff, it is short. They do have some of the talent they have. It's young. They start making some big decisions here.
Tom DeBlock would love a ground ball here with the bases loaded and 1 out here in the top of the first. Lorenzo Quintana, member of the Miami Marlins organization, who spent 60 games last year with the AAA Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp in the International League, batted .246 with a .785 OPS. An older guy, 33, not exactly a prospect in the Marlins system, but an organizational depth player as he takes the 0-1 away, and it's 1-1. Tom DeBlock pitched in the 2017 Classic, a couple of games in relief. As you look back over the span of Lorenzo Quintana's minor league time. Previously in the Astros organization, he started there in 2018 as a 29-year-old player with AA Corpus Christi. Spent 2 years in the Astros system. Ground ball out to short could be the job that Tom DeBlock needed, and the 6-4-3 wraps up a first inning threat for Cuba. DeBlock survives the Netherlands to the bat rack. Bottom of the first coming up from Ty Jung when we return. Starting lineup for the Kingdom of the Netherlands as announced by the first Curaçaoan player to ever play in the major leagues, Hensley Mullins. Talk about loaded. This lineup is as loaded as any we are going to see in this 2023 Classic.
Yeah, we talked about the shortstops and the gold gloves. What about the offense too? All those infielders at the top of this lineup. This is the big strength for the Netherlands too. We talked about Tom DeBlock getting out of that inning, getting that weak contact. Just get it to one of these infielders. Get something on the ground, and that's exactly what he did.
Leadoff man for the Netherlands here on day number 1 of this 2023 WBC is the, I think it is fair to say, shockingly unsigned Jurickson Profar. We'll talk about that as we take a look for the first time today at Yariel Rodriguez. Ryan, I know this is the guy you are really excited to see. He has been a stud in Japan pitching for the Chunichi Dragons.
Yeah, he absolutely has teared it up in Japan in the major leagues, and we get a chance to see him on the world stage, but just an absolute repertoire. Fastball in the mid-90s. He's got a couple different breaking balls. You'll see him start to mess with that arm slot a little bit. That breaking ball of his, 3,000 RPM on that spin rate. This is one of the strengths of Cuba too. We talked a lot about the offense, obviously losing Despaigne, but their pitching, some of the arms they have, some of the guys who are pitching over in Japan who have come back to represent Cuba, it's a big strong suit.
Armando Johnson, yesterday, we had a chance to talk. His team was the first team to work out at the National Taiwan University of Sport yesterday, which was the field that we used for batting practice and team workouts yesterday. He could not have been more gracious with his time, more open about this team, and his excitement is palpable. Profar goes pitching and gone for out number 1 and strikeout number 1 for Yariel Rodriguez here in the bottom of the first.
And there is that breaking ball, middle of the plate, but it is late. We talked about the spin rate too. That just comes out of that same tunnel as his fastball. This is going to be tough. We talk about some of the major league talent. These guys, yes, they're coming from a spring training environment. They see good velocity, they see stuff, but not in a situation where they get pitched to when the games matter. So it's going to be a situation where the offense is going to be a little bit behind some of this plus pitching.
Rodriguez, 25 years old. He first pitched for Junichi in 2020. As the first pitch there is ball 1 to Roger Bernardina, another veteran. That was 98. You could hear that astonished wow from the crowd just now, which is the same reaction, by the way, as when you ordered a latte with 4 shots the other day of espresso.
Twice, 2 days in a row I got that reaction.
Count 1-1. But Rodriguez, one thing that fascinates me already, just seeing him live for the first time, that delivery, you can tell, is very much influenced by an NPB coaching staff. He's got the pause at the top of his motion to collect those mechanics. Not ordinarily something we might anticipate seeing from a Cuban starter, but that is very much, oh, that's a guy who pitches professionally in Japan.
Yeah, they all tend to adopt, and especially some of the Americans that head over to Japan as well. They adopt that little pause at the top, keep that mass back, and then just explosive fastball. By the way, I gave him a 90. I gave him a mid-90s. He busted out a 98. He must have heard me or something.
Here's a 2-1 on the way from the right-hander. That one's high. 3 balls and a strike. Take a look at that scouting report for Yariel Rodriguez. 97 on that last one.
Yeah, and again, we talked about the breaking balls. They are his big weapons. He will drop down on that slot from that fastball and that breaking ball. And it shows right here that change. We just got to look at that changeup too. Work in progress, but still a ton of movement.
Just misses on 3-1, so a 1-out walk for the veteran Roger Bernardino. That brings up Xander Bogaerts to a big ovation. Let's take a look at the defensive alignment behind Yariel Rodriguez for this Cuba squad. Luis Robert patrolling center field.
And you see Juan Moncada, the third baseman, joining this Cuban team. Luis Robert Jr. out there manning center field. You want to assess for this DH. Again, not the same flash when you're talking about what they're up against with defensively with the Netherlands on the other side. But this Cuban team is deep, and they take a lot of pride in these international tournaments.
And here is one of these superstars in the game of baseball, Xander Bogaerts, an 11-year, $280 million contract he signed with the San Diego Padres this offseason. But a guy who you were teammates with for a month, 2 months, almost a decade ago in the Boston Red Sox system. He saw you this morning at breakfast, came over and said hi. It had been a while. I mean, everyone we talked to in that Netherlands dugout raves about what a great guy Xander Bogaerts is, and we've heard that throughout his entire career.
Yeah, you mentioned it this morning, just making a point to come over and say what's up to me, which I was kind of shocked about. I'm like, bro, really? Which is good to see, but you mentioned it too. I mean, nothing but good things when you talk about the kind of chemistry he builds and the teammate he is. And again, too, I mean, the fact that, listen, we talk about a lot of these MLB superstars signing up to represent their country. Now, it's one thing if you're on Team USA or the Dominican Republic. You are playing locally in the United States. Xander Bogaerts, like I said, just joined a new team, the San Diego Padres. The first chance to get to know his coaches, get to know his teammates. But the priority for him, fly 14 hours across the Pacific Ocean and represent the Netherlands.
Third most hits in the big league since 2015. Right behind him, a guy who there was some thought could be part of this Cuba roster, Jose Abreu, obviously made a move this offseason as well.
This is one of those matchups too, Yariel Rodriguez. Pitches in Japan, you kind of ask that question, is the Japanese league on par with the Major League Baseball? Not quite, but you see this 0-2 breaking ball right here. You can see how it matches up against one of the game's best players, Xander Bogaerts.
In case you're wondering, there is an arrangement between Cuba and Nippon Professional Baseball that allows players to legally play in Japan. Cuban players can go from their home island to play NPB ball, as Bogarts takes up and in. So it's not a case of, for example, with Yohan Moncada or Luis Robert defecting, signing a contract to play for a U.S.-based organization, all that. A little bit different with the NPB guys. But, man, Yariel Rodriguez is the type of player that you imagine could very much have a future in Major League Baseball. 1.15 ERA last year, 60 strikeouts and 54 and 2/3 innings against 18 walks. He was the most valuable setup man in the Central League with the Tunisian Dragons. And a called strike 3 will set down Bogarts for out number 2 here in the bottom of the first.
We talked about that break ball, not his best. That pitch kind of cement mixed a little bit, backed up. Maybe a situation where he knows who he's facing, trying to do a little bit too much. It just goes to show, too, when Alexander Bogarts gets frozen, when you got to defend against 98, and that good breaking ball.
So that'll bring in Sir Didi Gregorius. Didi Gregorius was knighted. It's not just a nickname. He was actually given knighthood in 2011. His Netherlands squad won what was then known as the IBAF Baseball World Cup. And he was granted knighthood after that. IBAF, now the World Baseball Softball Confederation. Look at what Didi did in 2017 for this Netherlands team as they reached the Final Four.
Some of those numbers, 348 extra base hits, 5. 2017.
A 1 in tight on him. Gregorius, a guy who has been around the block. In the last couple years, he was really hampered by injury. Signed a 2-year contract with the Philadelphia Phillies. Just battled through those 2 years. He had some great time with the New York Yankees. He was assigned the impossible task of being the guy to try to step into the shortstop position after Derek Jeter. You can't even say replace Derek Jeter, but to step into that role, and really became someone that Yankee fans, I think, embraced after a rough start. But you look at those numbers, 2020, great year. Last 2 years, just not up to what we've expected from Didi Gregorius. And a swing and a tapper right side. And Rodriguez hopping off the mound, does it all himself to bring us to the close of 1. Some base traffic on both sides, but nothing across. We head to the top of the 2nd inning of a scoreless ball game in Taichung. Well, maybe 6 years ago, you were 7 years old. You remember watching the WBC and thinking, oh, this is fun, and now you need a little refresher course. World Baseball Classic 101, a class I feel like I could probably pass at this stage. 4 pools to open things in round 1. We're here in Taichung. Tokyo play starts tomorrow. Phoenix and Miami later in the week. You see how to advance. Pitch count limits we'll talk about a lot as the tournament goes along, and the early termination rule, which, you know, knocking wood to get this thing started. I would say in Pool A, I would be very surprised if we see an early termination to a game. These are really well-balanced teams.
Yeah, I think we boast the fact that you and I get to do the most evenly matched pool. I mean, again, nothing against some of these teams that are in the World Baseball Classic. But man, you look at some of the gauntlets you've got to run through, you know, in Pool B, Pool C and Pool D. Obviously, Team USA are absolutely stacked. Over in Phoenix, you've got the Dominican Republic, you've got Japan. I mean, this is a good sign, though, when you're looking at a pool like this. Obviously, Cuba, Netherlands, you've got some MLB talent. You have some unknowns, too. We're going to see later on tonight, Chinese Taipei. They are a really good team. They're kind of that wild card favorite here in this group.
Leadoff man here in the top of the 2nd inning for Cuba is Yadir Drake, a guy who saw some time in the Mexican League most recently, both the Summer and Winter League, but also saw some time in the Los Angeles Dodgers system back in the middle part of the last decade, and extremely athletic. That's the thing I remember about watching Yadir Drake throughout his minor league time, whether he was at Rancho Cucamonga in the then Class A Advanced California League, Tulsa AA, remember, really good year with Tulsa in the early stages of his minor league stay in 2015, played 100+ games there in the Texas League. He's a grounder over 2/3, is gobbled up And the first opportunity for Andrelton Simmons, the former multi-time Gold Glove winner, is out number 1 in the second.
Yeah, the fact you see Andrelton Simmons playing third base tells you everything you need to know about this infield. We talked about Tom DeBlock in the top of that first inning, trying to settle in. That is 100% nerves on this stage, waiting this long to play at this level. You think about it. A guy like Tom DeBlock, obviously, he knows who he's facing. He knows what's at stake. He knows the guys who are playing behind him. It's been a while since he's pitched at this level. So it just takes that little bit of time. You go in after that first inning. I've been there before. You walk down the tunnel of the dugout, catch your breath. Just try and make those little mechanical, fix those little mechanical cues and get back in counts.
He's already exceeded that 30-pitch threshold for a day of rest tomorrow as Yoelqui Bear, as you can see, last year put up some really impressive numbers in the Cuba National Series. He also got some time in independent ball in the Frontier League, playing for Quebec. But the name of the game for pitching, especially in this first round, is efficiency. And it was the same way, Ryan, you and I, for those who didn't get a chance to tune in the fall, we had the qualifiers in Germany and in Panama, and we talked about that a lot. With the pitch limit restrictions, you've got to be able to be economical, get outs early in counts, try to get deep into games or as deep as possible, which is a challenge. And take a look into that first base dugout. There is the Hall of Famer Bert Blyleven, the pitching coach for this Netherlands squad.
Yeah, those qualifiers, we get a chance to do them back in September. So much fun. I mean, I could literally sit here for hours and talk about some of the moments in those qualifiers. Non-baseball countries, essentially, trying to get to this stage, what it meant.
Netherlands manager and current Colorado Rockies hitting coach, Hensley Mullins. Just off the plate there to Guibert, and he takes a one-out walk here in the second. Well, back in the first inning, Tom DeBlock on the ropes, bases loaded, one out with Lorenzo Quintana at the plate. You talked about his need to do some of that weak contact, finally did it to get out of the jam.
Yeah, he definitely got off the ropes. You look at that pitch count, you glance out of that scoreboard, you see that pitch count start to mount up. You know what it means, obviously, with all the pitch restrictions. And what do you need? Round ball with one of the best infields on the planet behind you. Without that first inning.
Tom DeBlock's got an interesting baseball life. I don't even want to say in his past, because he's 26 years old. He's still got a lot of baseball ahead of him. But Tom DeBlock was originally signed by the Seattle Mariners, something you are familiar with, coming up in that Mariner system. But he never actually played in that Mariner system. He signed in August of 2013 out of the MLB European Academy. And the next year he retired, saying that he felt like playing baseball at that stage of his life in America as this ball is hammered in the air to center field. Bernardina giving it chase back to the warning track, and he'll haul it in. We're out number 2 in the second. The MLB field legend, Murray Cook, worked on this ballpark, which is the only natural grass park being used for this opening round, and he told us the ball does not carry very well to left center field here especially.
Yeah, I found that interesting. He mentioned the fact that you won't see balls really get out left field, but some of the comments, and we talked about this even back at the qualifiers, the balls have been jumping the first couple of days when guys are taking batting practice. We've got a chance to watch some BP here at this field. See Bernardino just kind of casually drifting back to that 400 sign.
First pitch up high to Yadiel Mujica. That was Arizbel Arubarena, who flew out a moment ago. Arubarena, by the way, in his pro days, we knew him as Arizbel. He is written on the lineup card for this Cuba squad as Barbaro, which is technically his first name, Barbaro Arizbel Arubarena. Yadiel Mujica takes that one just low and away. Roger Bernardina, an older guy on this squad, he still covers a ton of ground.
Yeah, you can see this is backing up to that warning track. That's the other part of this as well. This Cuban team, we got a chance to watch them play on this field, but just trying to get the feel for some of these stadiums, some of the dimensions. It does get deep back there, just beyond that 400 sign.
Runner off from the first. And we'll do it again as right-hander Derek West begins to get loose. Houston Astros prospect in the Netherlands bullpen. Bullpens here at Taichung Intercontinental Baseball Stadium used to be on the warning track, Ryan, as you noted, a former CPBL pitcher in your own right here in Taiwan. They've moved them with some ballpark renovations. They're actually under the stands now on each side. So there you get a look at those indoor bullpens. Derek West throwing.
And this is going to be the story once you get in that 6th, 7th inning for the Netherlands.
Down the right field line, that's a fair ball, and that's going to be extra bases into the corner for Yadil Mujica as Guibert flying around third base is getting the wave in there, and Cuba is onto the board with the first run of the 2023 World Baseball Classic and a 1-0 lead in the second.
And this is a breaking ball, middle of the plate, a pitch he got away with earlier on in this game in the first inning, second inning. But not this time. This ball just left out over the plate. No infield is stopping this. And that deep part into right field. Plenty of time for that base runner to score on this.
So pretty fitting. We talk about all the firepower in these lineups, and it's the 9-hole hitter, Yadil Mujica, who comes through with the first extra base hit of this classic.
This is the chance to Cuba. We talked to some of their players yesterday talking about how their offense, they'd gone through Japan in the lead up to this, trying to prep for this World Baseball Classic. They were flat offensively. We got a chance to watch them the other day. Obviously, potent lineup. They are missing Despaigne, but they were flat. So this is a good sign. Second inning, you can take a breath, settle in.
And to cash in on one of those walks, already 4 of those today for Tom DeBlock. The first one plated by Cuba. Comes from the 9 spot with Mujica. Now swinging a drive out to right. It'll hang up there for Josh Palacios, who pulls it in, and that retires the side here in the second. Roel Santos retired. We'll enter the bottom of the second inning. Cuba's got the first run of the day and a 1-0 lead over the Netherlands. Jonathan Scope, the leadoff man for the Kingdom of the Netherlands as we head into the bottom half of the second inning. We're on the top of this frame. First pitch strike in there from Yariel Rodriguez. Ryan, it's obviously very much more about how you finish than how you start, but early runs are so important as man. Scope takes that off the elbow guard, and the moments where you're very thankful for the elbow guard as he'll take up residence at first, and that one hummed in there. And a leadoff base runner here in the bottom of 2 for the Netherlands.
This is 97. That never feels good in the month of March, especially when you're limited to how much pitching you've seen. Not to mention 97, drop down arm slot. Fresh off that backdoor slider he threw. You can see the reaction, obviously not on purpose, but gonna have that little bit of emotion running high, that's for sure. Early here in game 1.
And that brings up the big power bat, Vladimir Ballantyne, who goes first pitch swinging and lifts one to center. Where Luis Robert Jr.'s got it in his sights. We'll have a lot of time to talk about Vladimir Ballantyne over the next 5 days, but really interesting baseball lifer who made some headlines in the big leagues, then moved over to Japan, was a legend in Japan for a little while, left Nippon Professional Baseball. We thought was sort of on his way out. You talked to him yesterday at breakfast. He said, no, I still want to play. I'm just not going to be playing in Japan.
Yeah, and this is one of the things, obviously, you always talked about just getting him in shape for this. You mentioned his time in Japan, 300-plus home runs. And I wasn't watching the monitor by that. I just saw a legendary bat flip. I'm thinking, man, is that ball gone? Obviously, lazy fly ball to center field, but you will see some good bat flips. If he can get on a roll, he can get up to game speed. That's one challenge for him, getting back to the kind of game speed that he is used to seeing. Obviously, 97, 98. Tough to speed up when you've been out of the loop for a little bit, but it's going to be interesting. He was such a factor in 2017 for this Netherlands team, getting all the way to those finals.
So it brings in Josh Palacios. And Palacios will take first. So some second inning command issues now for Yariel Rodriguez, and he's going to get a visit to the mound from Lorenzo Quintana as backstop to try to settle back into a rhythm here in the second.
Yeah, you can see that command starting to get away from him here in the second inning. Let's not forget, we talked about this with the Netherlands too. You have to play into that pitch count just a little bit. The Cuban pitchers, some of these guys we know who pitch over in Japan, have to get into that depth as best you can and have those long at-bats.
So one out in first and second now for Andrelton Simmons. Simmons, another guy who right now is at a fascinating place in his baseball life. Last year played 34 games with the Chicago Cubs. The bat obviously has never been Simmons' calling card. He's been a defense-first guy throughout his time in pro ball, but 34 games last year with the Cubs, an OPS of just .431. This is only last year's age 32 season. And somebody who has played some of the best defense at the most valuable position in baseball over the course of his career. And you wonder, what does the market look like for somebody like Simmons, who was outstanding 6 years ago for the Netherlands in the WBC?
Yeah, you mentioned the offense, one of the most aggressive hitters in the big leagues. He's up there with seeing the least amount of pitches too. That pitch is over the plate. I mean, I'm kind of shocked he hasn't swung the bat yet. There's already 2 pitches into this at bat. A chance to watch plenty of him in the AL West with the Angels.
1 ball and 1 strike on him. Rodriguez trying to get out of a self-generated jam here in the second with 2 batters hit by pitches. Andrelton Simmons is one of the guys who I very much think of as the reason why I would never be successful as a scout. I remember in 2011 seeing him with the Lynchburg Hillcats and what was then the Class A Advanced Carolina League, and was there as a radio broadcaster and saw this very highly touted kid out of a junior college in Oklahoma, and people talked about, oh man, you won't believe the Simmons kid. And he really struggled. We had a series, I believe it was a 4-game weekend series, the team that I worked for at the time, the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, who were Texas Rangers affiliate, and he just did not look comfortable. He made a few errors, was not impressive at the plate, and I thought, I don't really see it with this guy. And then, 5 years later, 4 Gold Gloves. Nah, all right.
Good job, Tyler. Glad I tuned into that game.
Simmons awaiting. 1-2 on the way from Rodriguez as the right-hander sets and deals. And talk about that aggressiveness with Andrelton Simmons, and that way up high, but chased it for strikeout number 3 for Rodriguez.
Yeah, I think for Andrelton Simmons, look, he is aggressive. He can make a ton of contact, but just not the thump in his bat. Especially when you're talking extra base hits, that offensive production has been limited over the last couple of years. Team's starting to expand a ton from the first pitch of the at-bat, and again, swinging at that fastball up at letters.
So with 2 out and 2 on, the task now falls to Chadwick Tromp. Swing and a miss for the young Atlanta prospect. Tromp, who has played in the big leagues over the last few seasons, but not a ton of time at the major league level. He actually got his big league debut with the San Francisco Giants. 24 games in that shortened pandemic season in 2020, 9 games the following year with the Giants, 1 game last year. He did go 3 for 4 with 2 doubles and 3 RBIs for Atlanta. No pitch there as he called time and stepped out.
See Yariel Garcia getting to that pitch number 28. We talk about if he goes 30 plus, has to have that day of rest. Let's not forget, he's a setup guy over in Japan too, so it is limited how many innings he's going to go per outing. See Garcia warming up the lefty. That's the one thing, Cuba, we talked about the strength of the pitching. They have the depth to be able to do this matching up where they can go a guy like Rodriguez, just a couple innings, and then they're going to turn it over. It's that breaking ball. We talked about the spin on that pitch. It's tight, it's late. Pairs so well with that 97 up in the strike zone.
One pitch away from that 1 day of rest coming up. By the way, one important thing to note with these rest restrictions, you see at the bottom there, if you pitch 2 consecutive days, it's 1 day of rest. There is not an aggregate pitch limit between 2 days. So if you throw 24 pitches one day and 30 pitches the next day. That doesn't count as 50 pitches, which would necessitate multiple days of rest. So something to keep in mind. Pitch on back-to-back days. As he has hit the 30 mark here with a ball and 2 strikes and 2 gone. 2 out there for Chadwick Tromp, trying to draw his team even in the bottom of the second. In tight, 2-2.
That's been the recipe too. That 85-mile-per-hour slider dropping down a little bit, and then he tends to go up in the strike zone with 96. Let's see if he goes up again. Try and get that swing and miss above the barrel.
Got it. Great pitch on 2-2 from Yariel Rodriguez. His day may be coming to a close in 2 pretty stellar innings. The young right-hander from the Chunichi Dragons, as he's able to blow away Chadwick Tromp and send this game with Cuba in front to the 3rd. Our score through 2 in Taichung. Cuba 1 and the Netherlands nothing. As we talked about in the Open today, the former dominant force on the international baseball map, Cuba, has spent a lot of time playing a lot of really good baseball in the World Baseball Classic, but started the WBC, made it all the way to the final, lost to Japan. Since then, this has been a federation that has not gotten to the stage it's wanted to reach over the last 3 World Baseball Classics, eliminated in the 2nd round. And Ryan, you got to think that was a large part of the decision to welcome some big leaguers back into the fold, like the guy in the batter's box right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always been that international powerhouse. I got a chance to play against him in the gold medal game in the Athens Olympics. And big reason for that, for decades, obviously the players stayed in Cuba. They weren't heading off to the U.S. It was rare for a guy to defect and head to the United States. So they had all this in-house talent. Obviously, as the years have gone on, especially with this World Baseball Classic and seeing him on this kind of stage, it's kind of leveled the playing field a little bit. You mentioned it. This is just one of the best storylines of this entire World Baseball Classic. Seeing Major League players back in the Cuban uniform.
Didi Gregorius snares the grounder over to first. Yohan Moncada is retired, 1 up, 1 down. I think people don't really comprehend just how dominant Cuba was in international baseball, and not just for a short span. I mean, for decades and decades and decades. Cuba, in the 5 editions of the Olympic Games in which baseball was a fully admitted sport, Cuba won 3 golds and 2 silvers. A team that entered 35 Baseball World Cups and won 25 gold medals, and really was the baseball equivalent for viewers in America of what the Soviet Union was in hockey in the Olympics. And we talk much in the United States about the miracle on ice and knocking off the Soviets with a team of amateurs and blah, blah, blah. That was Cuba in baseball. And over the last decade plus, Luis Robert Jr., quick work made of him.
This is big right here. Tyler, you see Tom the Block talking about facing this Cuban lineup. The fact he is cutting through this 3rd inning, just giving that last inning before that pitch count gets to 65, getting a little bit of length so you don't have to lean so heavily on that pitching depth.
You look at those numbers, Israel's only played 1 first round in the World Baseball Classic. That was 6 years ago. But look at that winning percentage right behind Israel. Puerto Rico with 1 first-round loss, and Cuba right there with just 1 additional first-round loss.
Yeah, Tom the Block, we talked about this from the 1st inning, getting settled in, getting those nerves under control. And that's that breaking ball which has bailed him out. A big strikeout, another big out here to get to the 3rd.
Broken bat flare, and an easy play over there for Jonathan Scope. In the first 3 up, 3 down inning of the day on either side belongs to Tom DeBlock. We're headed to the bottom of the 3rd inning. Cuba with a 1-0 lead. Bottom of the 3rd inning. Cuba with a 1-0 lead over the Netherlands. Back on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon in Taichung on the island of Taiwan. First pitch of the bottom of the 3rd is in to Jurksen. Profar for ball one. Profar, the leadoff man in this Kingdom of the Netherlands lineup, 0-for-1 today. And things started with that strikeout against Yario Rodriguez, and he crushes one to right. Moving back on it is Guibert on the warning track. He will haul it in. And Profar rounding first, arms out. Like, how did I not get all that?
We've already seen this a couple times where you think that ball is way going into the seats, and the parachute gets pulled. It stays in right field.
Especially with the sound off the bat with that one.
This is that slider. He's staying in the middle of the plate. Profile thought he had it too.
What happened? So that brings up Roger Bernardina. I think it's safe to say ageless Roger Bernardina. 38 years old is Bernardina. He has played everywhere almost that you can imagine on the international baseball landscape. The minor leagues, the major leagues. Played in Mexico, played here in Taiwan. He's played in Korea. He's played in the Dutch major leagues. This most recent offseason, he played in the Nicaraguan Winter League. He's played in the Caribbean Series. He's been in the Classic. He's played in Premier 12. I mean, Roger Bernardina is, it's safe to say, you know, people have those memes on, you know, the year is 2180 and humanity has vanished off the globe, but Roger Bernardina suits up for his 56th World Baseball Classic. That'll be the career for Roger Bernardina.
Hey, you got to keep that dream alive. I'm jealous. I just turned 40, Tyler. As you already know, you did send me a nice 40th birthday present. I still haven't got it in the mail yet, but I know you did. I know you did.
I'm assuming it's on the way.
Yeah, I mean, look,
transit.
I'm jealous, man. He's 38. I'm watching these guys take BP and work out the last couple of days. And I kind of want to suit up, put the green and gold back on, maybe head over, help out Team Australia. What do you think?
A broken bat flare left side, and Bernardina is going to find his way on as that thing slowly got out to Arubarena for an infield single.
38 years old, he's still got that speed. This is that play off this is that ball off the handle, a little broken bat. No chance. That's the one thing that usually goes right away is that speed. You see 38 playing center field. In that line.
I think you can do it. I believe in you.
You think so?
If you wanted to, if you would have taken the last 6 months, if Regensburg and Panama City had lit the fire, I think you could have been a member of that squad.
I did. I started throwing the ball, in the garage off the wall, trying to get it back.
Trying to reclaim the glory days?
Yeah, it just was not coming back.
2013, 2017, you pitched in the World Baseball Classic for your native Australia. I know some people have noticed the accent, including former Team USA Premier 12 catcher Eric Kratz. Man, Xander Bogaerts apparently got that off of the left arm, and he'll take first. So it's back-to-back base runners with one out now, with Bogaerts stationing himself at first. If you're a Padres fan or Padres management, this is the type of hit-by-pitch you can live with. Oh, that did not get Xander Bogaerts.
No, it did not. You can see the Cuban dugout right now just having to think about trying to get that second look. Maybe they're going to call for instant replay. We do have instant replay.
One challenge per team for this opening round. Wow, Cuba is evidently not going to challenge that, or are they? This is our second base umpire and the crew chief, Dan Iasonia, and Cuba will ask for replay, so Xander Bogaerts will very likely head back to the plate as it appears right now. But that's good because that gives us a chance to talk about your WBC experience. You did get to pitch for your country twice, and not only that, but you pitched in the Olympics for your country. You got a silver medal as we take a look at the replay rule for this World Baseball Classic. Coming up in the final, things will change a little bit in terms of the amount of challenges, but this is what we've got for replay rules and regulations.
And all the talk at spring training in 2023 has been the pitch clock. We will not see this. This will be the last time that meaningful games will not have the pitch timer. You see down there the rules that will not be implemented. Obviously the larger bases, the defensive shifts. You can shift however you want. But this is a big one, the instant replay. And you can see quick call back into the batter's box for Xander Bogaerts. But one thing in the States, in Major League Baseball, they do have those good resources to have someone manning the video replay. So You can tell with that Cuban dugout taking a little bit longer, but there's no question whatsoever. You don't need many angles to overrule this one.
That laugh from Xander Bogaerts is pretty good. Like, almost had it. Almost had it. So Bogaerts back to the batter's box. Roger Bernardina returns to first. But you know this feeling very intimately of playing for your country. Won a silver medal at the Olympics, pitched in the WBC. The honor that these guys have getting a chance to do this and getting a chance to do, I mean, it's the middle of a Wednesday afternoon. We got thousands of people here for this game between two teams from a different hemisphere. The way that these fan bases embrace the Classic is incredible, and this crowd is nothing compared to what we're going to see tonight as Chinese Taipei takes the field for the first time against Panama.
Yeah, it is going to be electric tonight, but you mentioned the fact that this crowd gets a chance to see this man right here, Xander Bogaerts. They pay attention to Major League Baseball. I've spent some time here in Taiwan. They absolutely love watching their favorite players. He's fresh off an 11-year, $280 million deal with the Padres. And here he is, home soil. You get to sit back there and watch him right in front of you.
2 balls and 2 strikes now on Bogaerts after the foul into the screen. We did have a moment yesterday where a guy sought you out to sign your 2015 Ida Rhinos card.
Yeah.
And I know how much that meant to you.
You like how I played that off there like that was nothing? That was a big deal. That warmed my heart, made me feel good about Pool A here in Taiwan.
2-2 grounded out to second. A tough play out there. Mujica, nice job ranging to his left for the second out of the inning as Bernardina takes second.
This is interesting too. You see the pitch count, 43 for Rodriguez. Let's not forget, we talk about some of the stuff, but look, he's thrown 54 innings, 53 appearances. So he's not a guy who's been stretched out, but here he is putting on that Cuban jersey, and the Chunichi Dragons may be sort of questioning this one a little bit as he's going 3 innings here.
2 gone now, and it brings up Didi Gregorius. The bats on the man in scoring position in a 1-0 game. Seb Visser, who is the Kingdom of the Netherlands PR man, told me today the way they actually pronounce Gregorius' last name in Dutch. Do you want me to attempt it? Should I attempt it or not?
You can't. Don't put the pressure on me though. For if fans are watching, they're like, "Hey, pronounce his name correctly," because I'm going to butcher it, especially with an Australian accent. But you can go for it, Tyler, all day. Go for it.
I believe he said Gregorius.
Nice.
That's how they say it in Dutch.
Nailed it. I believe. We'll stand there down the dugout. That's a nice delivery.
I don't know if I got it right.
Can you keep that up? The rest of this tournament.
1 ball, 1 strike on Didi Gregorius. Another guy who's played a whole lot of spots in his professional baseball career. Actually played in the inaugural season of the domestic league in your home country in Australia. He played for the Canberra Cavalry in the 2010-2011 season, back when he was a Cincinnati Reds prospect.
Yeah, he was a teammate of mine, 2014 with the D-backs. That was one of the icebreakers. I was joining a new team going into spring training. He came right up to me and said, "Hey, had some time in Australia." But man, what a career trajectory he has had. You mentioned the fact that early in this game, filling the shoes for Derek Jeter, but when he came up with the D-backs, got off to a slow start, gets sent over to New York and filled that shortstop position so well. It's turned into a nice career.
Swing and a miss there on 2-1 to put the count even. Didi Gregorius in 2017 and 2018, he got MVP votes in the American League, an OPS of 796 in 2017, which was his 3rd season in the Yankee pinstripes, as he rocks the pinstripes of his home country now. 2018, an 829 OPS, and you see those career numbers. They've tailed off a little bit in recent years. Time with the Phillies in 2021 and 22, not healthy for that stretch. Also played with the Phils in 2020, but re-signed a 2-year deal after that as he flares this one out over the head of the leaping Arubarena and down and left, and it's a 2-out RBI single for Didi Gregorius, and the Netherlands has its first run of the 2023 Classic. We're all tied up.
And fresh, showing those offensive numbers. Didi Gregorius, good piece of hitting. 2 strikes, not trying to do a whole lot. Now, one thing with Didi, you see when you look at the spray chart from him, he does pull the ball a ton. I love this, just kind of spreading out, not trying to do a whole lot, flaring that ball into left field, tying this game up.
Good effort from Aruba Reina out there at short. But just over his reach, and with the tying run home. Again, Ryan, you mentioned earlier in this inning, the guy in Yariel Rodriguez who generally doesn't have to go this deep into his pitch count. Gregorius getting his guys going in that first base dugout, tying things up in the third.
Especially this time of year, too. It's March. Obviously, he's into his spring training in Japan. Kyle, you mentioned the fact that there could be a chance they're trying to stretch him out a little bit to start. Yeah, fair enough. But when you're getting deep into this pitch count, 40, 50 pitches, some of that adrenaline wears off a little bit. I got to say that DD, giving his team a chance to breathe, tying this game up here in the third.
Quickly, no balls and 2 strikes on Jonathan Scope. Jonathan Scope, one of a handful of sets of brothers on these Pool A rosters. We'll talk about that as the week rolls along. Jonathan, like so many guys on this squad, he has spent some time across a handful of different teams at the major league level. Broke in with Baltimore back in 2013, some time with the Milwaukee Brewers in 2018, currently with the Detroit Tigers after a stint in Minnesota, and he's gone on strike to end things here in the third. But Didi Gregorius comes through with a 2-out RBI single. We got a brand new ball game as we head to the fourth, 1-1 in Taichung. Tom DeBlock's day is done after 3 innings, but really stabilized himself after kind of a shaky start, Ryan.
He really did. A lot of nerves in that first inning. This was the big ground ball with loaded bases, got him off the ropes, and he was able to settle in. Once he got that feel for that breaking ball and mixed in the fastball over the plate, got better accounts, he looked so much better. But he's Pool A essentially is done. Pitch count 65 max in this first round of play, and they have to go to the bullpen in Derek West.
4 days of rest mandatory for Tom DeBlock, so we will only see him again if the Netherlands advances to the quarterfinals in Tokyo. And take a look at the right-hander out of the Houston Astros organization, the former Pitt Panther, Derek West, who has already pitched 1 game in spring training this year with the Astros.
The 14th rounder with the Houston Astros. 26 years old, just developed a big sweeping slider. Good fastball too, 92, 93, can touch 94. We've already seen that today.
Back at Taichung Intercontinental Baseball Stadium with former big league pitcher and 2-time World Baseball Classic veteran Ryan Roland Smith. Welcome back to this 2023 Day 1 of the World Baseball Classic. My name is Tyler Mon. Pool A play opening here today in Taiwan. Pool B will kick off tomorrow. Excited to hear Steven Nelson and Jose Mota on the call from the Tokyo Dome for an outstanding group of teams, as a bouncing ball out towards second will send Scope to the backhand. 1 up, 1 down. Lorenzo Quintana is going. We were hearing that people have been able to pick up on just a slight air horn sound, and we have found the gentleman doing it. That fella right there. I think might be cheering for Cuba.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, just judging, maybe the hat. Maybe the hat did it.
Some subtleties.
The air horn. But hey, listen, you'll hear some props tonight in the game. You'll hear some noise, some horns, some drums. When you see Chinese Taipei playing for the first time since 2013 in their home stadium.
I got to ask you, we saw prior to first pitch today, the lineups introduced, the guys meet in the middle of the field day, exchange hats between the teams. What do you think I'd have to trade that guy for that hat?
You?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you are going to have to trade your position here in the booth to get that hat. I wouldn't give that up either. Look at that thing. Love it. He is decked out head to toe.
Dear Drake serving that one nearly for extra bases down the line. But man, it is so much fun seeing these fans. Look at how close this ball was down the line. Just touching down wide of the stripe. Shoji Arasumi, our first base umpire from Nippon Professional Baseball in Japan. Right on top of it for the call. The 0-2 buried from West.
And for Cuba, just trying to get something going offensively. Obviously, it's a 1-1 game, but they've been kind of lulled to sleep, getting weak contact into that infield. Another one.
Grounder over to short. Candy hop for Bogarts. 2 gone.
It's going to be a good feeling, too, for Derek West. You mentioned the fact he's American-born. Has that Dutch heritage, his grandparents. And there's so many nerves at game one, whether you've done it before, you're from the country, you've met these guys. I mean, you got to remember, too, we talked about Cuba, the lead up, you know, going all through Japan, trying to get ready for this tournament. A lot of these guys, especially guys coming out of Major League camp or even minor league camp, you only have just a couple days to get the feel for that clubhouse chemistry, the guy behind the plate, the guy catching you in tromp. First time you may have met some guys literally 48 hours ago for some of these players.
No balls and a strike on Yoelkis Guibert, who raced home from first after his 1-out walk in the second inning. The RBI double from Yadiel Mujica. How about the stitches on the right elbow of Derek West? I feel like that ties in very well with this ballpark. If we show you throughout Pool A, shots from center field, you'll see the 2 massive red lattice work steel beam structures. There they are. Those are supposed to emulate the stitches of a baseball, which I find awesome. That's the most recognizable thing about this venue. I never knew that until this week when we were told that in our prep coming in here to Taichung. That is such a cool element to this park.
By the way, great segue there from a tattoo of baseball seams into the stadium and
like
some of the stats and facts about it.
You like that?
The ballpark. I love it. You're a pro.
Did you pitch in this park when you were in the CPBL?
I believe I did.
At some
yes.
point?
I did, yes.
This park is home to the CTBC brothers, who are, of all the teams in Taiwan, that is the legendary, that is the Yankees equivalent. You hear about the Tokyo Yomiuri Giants and Nippon Professional Baseball. That's the equivalent here in the CPBL, as 3 grounders on the infield wrap things up for Cuba in the 4th. We're into the bottom of the 4th inning in a 1-1 game in Taiwan. Welcome back to the 2023 World Baseball Classic alongside former big league pitcher and 2-time World Baseball Classic veteran Ryan Rowland-Smith. I'm Tyler Mon here in Taichung, Taiwan, the Intercontinental Baseball Stadium, home to Pool A, kicking off our coverage with game number 1 today, as the veteran Vladimir Valentin has already seen more pitches in this at-bat than he did in his last one, but he's not going to see that many more as he skies one over to first and an easy play over at first base for Yadir Drake. So 3 pitches through Valentin's first 2 trips to the plate, and he's gone for out number 1 here in the bottom half of the 4th inning. And it is still Yariel Rodriguez out there, who is approaching the pitch limit of 65 now, but they're going to ride him for as long as he'll take them here in the 4th.
Yeah, it's a good effort here in the 4th. I mean, since 2020 pitching for the Chunichi Dragons, his longest outing was 2 1/3. That's pretty much it.
Already well past that to get this 4th inning underway. You see Armando Johnson in the third base dugout. You know, it was really cool talking with Cuba's manager yesterday at his team's workouts, and Armando Johnson, who managed for Isla de Juventud in the Cuban National Series 1996 to 2014. He's coached at essentially every level of Cuban baseball that you can imagine. I asked him about some of their recent success. Last year, Cuba's national team played in the World Championship final of the U15 Baseball World Cup against the United States in Hermosillo, Mexico. And I asked him, you know, what does that do for Cuban baseball when you see that young kids are still having so much success? And he said, you know, in the early part of the 2000s, I coached those younger teams, and that's still my favorite managerial experience. U12, U15, U18. Thought that was so cool for a guy who's had the amount of success that Armando Johnson has had to still look back on that chapter of his career as, oh, that was the purest time that I had as a manager.
And we were talking through a translator, and as the translator gave him that question, you could see him light up. It was really cool. And we got a chance to ask him as well, how does Cuba develop all this talent? Look, in the United States, obviously velocity in the last couple of years has been a big thing. Everyone now throws 100. I get that. Obviously, hitting has changed so much. Analytics has played such a big part. All these facilities, driveline, which has been so instrumental in development. You think of a country like Cuba with the lack of resources, but just able to churn out pitchers like you see Rodriguez right now throwing 97, 98. And he talked about what they do in schools. By the way, pairing off that 98, getting that slider that thing. He stays on top of that pitch. It is filthy. But just back on the developing pitches, we take one more look at this 3,000 RPM breaking ball from Yaro Rodriguez. Still looking strong here as he gets deep in that pitch count. But I love what he said too. I asked him, I said, look, Cuba obviously, baseball has traditionally been the big sport, boxing, track and field. Is it something that when you have young kids, they talked about having the coaching at some of these schools when these kids are young? And he said, no, we let our kids do all the sports. They get to do everything. And then they start to figure it out as they get older. They just produce athletes. It's amazing too. You continue to see young players coming up through the ranks with Cuba with really a lack of resources like we see here in the United States.
That was a point I was going to make. That U15 World Cup last year, that Cuban squad arrived in Hermosillo, Mexico, as a ground ball up the middle into center field for the first hit of the tournament for Andrelton Simmons as we approach the pitch limit for Yariel Rodriguez, who will throw number 63 with his next one. Now, if you are at the threshold, you can exceed it in order to complete a plate appearance, as you take a look at the left-hander Onelki Garcia throwing in that bullpen on the third base side. But that Cuba squad arrived in Hermosillo last year with, I believe, 4 total bats. They had to go through the approval process of what was legal to use for that Youth World Cup. They only had 1 bat that was approved. The Cuban expat community in Hermosillo, as that sends Chadwick Tromp down to the ground, got together, pitched in some funds, bought some new bats for that team, and they go into that World Championship final against USA Baseball, which is a behemoth, especially at the youth levels. Man, that goes way up and tight on Trump. Thankfully, Chadwick Tromp able to get out of the way of it. That Cuba team, like you said, resource limited to say the least. They made it all the way to that final. They're tied late in that game against the United States. The U.S. ended up rallying to win, breaking a late tie. But that is a team that is so full of talent. And to overcome those obstacles and still make it to the World Championship final against a team with all the resources of the United States shows you just how alive and well baseball is in Cuba, even despite, according to state media, 650-plus defections in recent years for players of this age group. Baseball is still thriving there. Pitch up high to Trump.
Another thing he mentioned too, and I love this, he said once these big leaguers got back, obviously Cespedes joined the roster late, Moncada and Luis Robert. A lot of the young players on this roster look up to those guys. And here they are. Usually when a player defects, they never see him again. Now they get a chance to wear that jersey and share this time with players who they look up to.
Flare right side and out on one hop to Yadiel Mujica. 4 complete innings for Yariel Rodriguez, who will depart to that third base dugout with his team and the Netherlands all even at 1. We got a great one from Intercontinental Stadium headed to the 5th. Talking about just how much talent is on this Cuba roster. Look at what could have been on this Cuba roster. This top to bottom would have been as loaded as USA Baseball, Samurai Japan, the Dominican Republic. The names on that graphic, shocking with the amount of talent that has currently been placed into the major leagues. Last year, 23 Cuban-born players on opening day rosters, which tied an all-time high. That graphic is stunning with the amount of guys who could have been on this squad. Risbella Ruperena will lift out number 1 into shallow center here to kick off the 5th.
Yeah, Tyler, I mean, you look at this list, and I can't tell you the amount of times I've had the conversation, with teammates, whether it's been World Baseball Classic or you're talking about what the Cuban team could look like if you did have some of these players who look on this list. And a lot of these guys too, and when you take a glance, obviously guys like Aroldis Chapman, a guy who's already on this team right now, Cespedes, but this is their showcase. This is their time to be up against the best players in the world, and then all of a sudden, from a scouting point of view, like, wow, this translates. See that man right there? This translates to the major league level when they get a chance to play against the best players in the United States, the best players against Japan.
Eric Mendez currently throwing in the Netherlands bullpen on that first base side. One of my favorite stories, Ryan Rowland-Smith is one of my favorite storytellers that I've ever encountered in my life. One of my favorite stories of yours that you've told is the first time you ever saw the arm that we all came to know as Aroldis Chapman, but when you saw him, nobody knew what Aroldis Chapman was capable of doing.
No, and to that point, this is 2009. I didn't get a chance to go to that World Baseball Classic, but my teammates who were down there, I never forget, they tell the story. Some of the hitters are like, they're looking out in left field. This is in Mexico, and the radar gun only had the 2 digits, you know. And so all of a sudden, the radar kept showing up 00, 01, 02, and they're like, oh, the radar gun's busted. Because the scouting report, like, hey, look, he throws hard. We're not quite sure how hard he throws. And they're like, well, the radar gun's busted. I can't get a gauge. And then after the game, they spoke to the advanced scout. He said, no, you don't understand. That's
102.
That's 102. That's 101. They're like, oh, wow, okay. All right, I get it. And also hearing the guys just hearing just the noise the ball made, how explosive it was, and watching him do his thing in the major leagues was fascinating.
You know, I was going to say tough play left side. No play is a tough play for Xander Bogaerts, and that's the second out of the 5th inning. Great stretch over there at first by Gregorius as well.
Yeah, and then you have the natural shortstop over there at first base with the stretch. It's got to be the bread and butter for these pitchers from the Netherlands. Get that weak contact. It's going to get gobbled up all day, especially that left side of the infield.
So 2 gone and back to the top of the order. This is 9 straight retired by Netherlands pitching, by the way. Tom DeBlock closing, retiring the final 4 men he saw in the 2nd and 3rd. 3 up, 3 down for Derek West, the Astros prospect, in the 4th, and he's retired the first 2 here in the 5th. And now an attempt by Roel Santos to get a look at something as he squares and takes ball 1 up high. Santos leadoff walk in the 1st. He flew out to right field in the 2nd. Xander Bogaerts, by the way, talk about the contract and the career he's had already. I'm also not sure if there are any guys in baseball just in the sheer cool factor who surpass Xander Bogaerts.
For sure.
Shohei Ohtani's obviously got to be in that conversation. Mike Trout's in that conversation. But just sheer cool factor, Xander Bogaerts is as good as it gets.
I think the word I like to use with him, it's effortless.
Yes.
Well, it's nothing's forced with him. He just has that thing about him.
It's just down to Santos.
And we see him sign with the Padres. You got to question with some of the infielders they have. Where does he play? Who plays shortstop? I'm going to give it to Derek West and Tom DeBlock. This pitching obviously settled in, shut this Cuban offense down. Obviously the walks have been a little bit of an issue. But Derek West, look, this is a guy pitching in the minor leagues. He's got this star-studded infield behind him. Looks calm, he's got good tempo. 2 quick outs here in the 5th.
Derek West last year pitched entirely in relief in the Astros organization at High A Asheville and Double A Corpus Christi. Really good at Asheville, 7 games there, an ERA of 2.25, 16 Ks and 8 innings against 5 walks.
Yeah, and you see that bottom line right there, added sweeping slider. This is something he's developed. So you can see the manager coming out.
Yeah, this may be the end of the day for West, as Hensley Mullins will go out for at least a conversation with the Astros prospect and now signals over to that first base side. So before Derek West gets a look at Yoan Moncada, he will instead head to the dugout. 27 pitches for West. Netherlands going to the bullpen. New arm into the game when we return. New arm into the game for the Kingdom of the Netherlands is Eric Mendez, who replaces that right-hander right there, Derek West, who retired 5 of the 6 men he faced before issuing the 2-out walk to Roel Santos here in the 5th. Young guy, a lot of potential here, Ryan, but a little bit raw. Eric Mendez is just at the outset of his professional career.
Yeah, and this is one of these balancing acts you have to have as well. When you do borrow these young pitchers from organizations, you know, hey, it's great to have a guy with, you know, with a scouting report like this. Obviously, very raw talent. Strike throwing is going to be the key factor here. You see the control issues, high strikeout rate, good velocity. But when you're borrowing these guys from these organizations, just like we saw with Derek West, you have to play up a little bit of that pitch count if you can go back-to-back days and some of these other factors as well.
And how about an introduction to the World Baseball Classic? Then climbing onto the pitcher's mound to face Yoan Moncada. If he reaches, Luis Robert Jr., and if he reaches, Yoenis Cespedes. As with 2 outs and a man at first, the first pitch is in for a strike to Moncada.
Yeah, that's one of the beauties of the World Baseball Classic. I can't say it enough. When you're a young A-ball kid, I've been there before. Next thing you know, you blink and you're facing major league players in games that count, mind you.
I remember in Germany, we talked with the Czech Republic squad about, if you guys qualify, you're playing on a really big stage. And the amount of guys who said, yeah, there's the potential we could be playing against Shohei Ohtani in Japan at the Tokyo Dome. And they'll do that this week. Runner off, 1-1 down, and that's a stolen base for Roel Santos. So Roel picks his spot, and now the potential go-ahead run in scoring position with 2 gone in the top of the 5th.
And that's one thing this experience will do, exploiting Mendez, who's a young pitcher. He's slow to the plate. They pick up on that. Took him 2 pitches to figure that out, get himself in scoring position. Tyler, you mentioned it. We talk about some of these Major League superstars all over the place, but the storylines when you have essentially a firefighter coming out of the Czech Republic facing a guy like Shohei Ohtani 60 feet away. It's amazing.
Firefighter, a geography teacher, a guy who works as an auditor for KPMG. The amount of stories on that Czech Republic squad, if you have not checked out MLB.com's coverage of what that Czech squad is bringing to Tokyo, be sure to go do so. One of the best stories in this World Baseball Classic, and we've got stories galore here in this 2023 edition. As Moncada gets under this one, down the line in right, a long run over there for Palacios, and it's out.
Yeah, get a good look at Moncada last year, the StatCast. Now look at this, he stays up the middle so well. What about some of these guys who do have success at this level? You see plenty of that blue, that 42 hits, that hit distribution right up the middle, especially here with 2 strikes. Something he's not going to try and do a whole lot. Stay up the middle, get that runner in from scoring position.
2-2. 3 balls and 2 strikes.
And you can see Xander Bogaerts playing up the middle as well.
And Jonathan Scope way back and out on that right side, and the perfect time to remind you that the shift restrictions for Major League Baseball in 2023 do not apply here in the Classic. So we will see shifting like we would have seen last year as Moncada flies out in foul territory to Simmons, and that will end the Cuba threat here in the top half of the 5th inning. We're ticketed for the bottom of the 5th. A run in the 2nd for Cuba. The Netherlands responded in the 3rd, and we got a 1-1 ball game through 4.5 here in Taichung. Left-hander Onelki Garcia will take over on the pitcher's mound for Cuba as we move into the bottom of the 4th inning. 4 terrific frames out of the right arm of the Chunichi Dragons setup star, Yariel Rodriguez, and Garcia takes over on the mound. Another Nippon Professional Baseball product, pitching for his home country during the 2023 Classic.
Yeah, his last year in Japan was 2020. Has pitched in the Mexican League since then. Struggled though, 2022 with a 7 ERA. Couple injuries involved, but he can ride it up there to mid-90s fastball. So Yaro Rodriguez getting a chance to see him get stretched out like that. You start to wonder, is this a guy who's going to be starting in Japan this year?
Just missing there to Jurickson Profar back at the top of the order for the Netherlands. 3 balls and a strike.
Here's the scouting report too. Well-traveled southpaw, that is for sure. Obviously defected from Cuba, played some time in the United States, got to the big leagues, spent plenty of time in Japan. In the last couple of years, just trying to find a home. He's 33 years old, pitching in Mexico, summer and winter leagues. Kind of that left-on-left guy.
Profar down the line in left. Tracking it, Santos toward the line. 1 gone. We'll take a look at the day from the starter, Yariel Rodriguez.
And he was as advertised too. We saw that fastball, 96, 97, and that slider of his. Even the pitches that were out over the plate, still getting some really bad reaction from these major league hitters he faced. Once he got on top of that pitch, it was flat in the beginning. And once he got on top of that, that slider of his, good night. Good effort. Talked about how limited he has been with being stretched out, giving his team 4 strong innings.
66 pitches Rodriguez finished on, 42 for strikes, 6 strikeouts in his 4 innings, which is right in line with what he's been doing in Nippon Professional Baseball last year. 60 Ks in 54 2/3 as the setup man for the Dragons. Roger Bernardino singled and scored back in the 3rd.
It's not what you expect to offensively. 1-1 game in the 5th inning. Teams just trying to get settled in, trying to get up to speed. We talked about it too. You can come out of spring training, getting those reps against obviously good quality pitching, or for Team Cuba getting a chance to face some of these Japanese pitchers. But when you're moving at game speed, when you're being sequenced against as a hitter, all of a sudden someone's really trying to dial in on some of your weak spots. A good way to pitch you, man. It's going to take just a few innings or even a couple days to get offensively up to game speed.
The other thing that's fascinating too, and Ryan, you're really familiar with this as somebody who's played in this competition, as you take a look at Andrew Jones, a big league legend, Curacao product, member of this coaching staff for Hensley Mullins. The scouting operations, as Bernardino bounces this one foul, are so different for the Classic versus anywhere else in the baseball world, because you, in the case of the Netherlands today, you're scouting 2 guys who pitched in Japan, but there are also guys on this roster who have not pitched outside of Cuba. There are guys in this roster who have pitched in the big leagues or have gotten time in major league organizations. You're trying to pick up information from so many different sources.
Yeah.
It's just it's a massive undertaking for scouts for all these teams in the Classic.
Yeah, it simply can't be that analytically driven way of scouting. We see so many major league teams obviously lean so heavily on some of these analytics, but you simply can't do that with half of these rosters. You mentioned too, it's that scouting report you get from that international scout, or that little piece of information, or that video you get to see, of a Cuban player playing for the Chinichi Dragons, whatever it may be. That's why it's so important too. Some of these coaching staffs, the way they're made up, we're going to see Mike Piazza, the Hall of Famer, manage the Italian team tomorrow. But if you employ and take on, some of these coaches in the United States, they have to have good gut feelings as opposed to leaning so heavily on some of the analytics.
Got him on a called strike 3, 83 miles an hour over the inside part of the plate to Roger Bernardino. First strikeout for Onelki Garcia, 7th of the day for Cuban pitching. With 2 gone and the base is empty, it brings up Bogarts.
And this is a pitch middle of the plate, little hanging slider, but that's his comfort zone, left on left. That's what he's been doing his entire career. Really good numbers against left-handed hitters.
One interesting note about Onelki Garcia, who's on the mound right now, in December of 2020, he actually signed to play here in Taiwan, and not just here in Taiwan, but here in this ballpark for the team that calls this park home, the CTBC Brothers. But that deal fell apart. He was released 3 months later in March after failing his physical. The team uncovered that he arrived here in Taiwan with some pre-existing injuries to the shoulder and elbow. So he ended up out of a job, at least in the short term there. He did not pitch anywhere in 2021, and then found himself in the Mexican League, both winter and summer, as well as getting some time in the Dominican Winter League this year.
And here he is facing Xander Bogaerts. Big at bat. 1-1 game here in the 5th. Couple at bats under his belt. He's going to break this one open.
Tip is 2-2 on Bogarts.
See that slider again to Bogarts. That's a pitch that when you're looking at the month of July from Xander Bogaerts, he is absolutely crushing. So forget, it is the month of March.
Ball was fouled at the plate, and good gamesmanship there from Lorenzo Quintana, who was trying to play it off as though he had caught it before. And turnabout fair play. Xander Bogaerts took first base earlier in this game on a ball that was nowhere near hitting him. But he's trying to get one up on the other here on day number 1 of the 2023 World Baseball Classic. 2 balls and 2 strikes. Garcia home. Runner to second. And that retires the side. The Netherlands retired in order for the first time today. And we are ticketed for the top of the 6th in a 1-1 game in Taichung. Welcome back to the 2023 World Baseball Classic with former big leaguer and two-time World Baseball Classic veteran Ryan Rowland-Smith. I'm Tyler Mon here in Taichung at the Intercontinental Baseball Stadium. Our coverage of Pool A continues. We got more Pool A action coming up tonight from here in Taichung. 7 o'clock local time, 6 a.m. Eastern time in the United States, 4 o'clock a.m. Mountain, 3 Pacific for our friends and family. Team Panama will play its first World Baseball Classic game in 5,113 days as they take on the host squad, Chinese Taipei. That's coming up tonight, 7 o'clock local time. You and I obviously have been tremendously excited to get this game underway. That game, anticipating the crowd tonight.
Yeah.
I think we've been as excited for that as anything else.
Yeah, it's going to be electric in here. We can't say it enough. I cannot wait. This place is going to be packed. You mentioned 10 years. Hey, you did throw me for a loop, though, when you threw some numbers of days out in between. I was like, man, look at them.
Not wild.
Was that just a straight Google, hey, Siri? Or...
I just add those up in my head.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah. Actually, I can see the equation over here on the table. Good job.
I'm like Goodwill Hunting. You know, it's my calling here. Is out number 1 is a strikeout. Luis Robert Jr. is gone to get things started in the 6th inning.
We talked about this in the 5th inning from Mendez. That one question mark for him being a young pitcher. Obviously the command. He gets on top of that slider. He could be a big league prospect. Just faced 2 major league hitters. Obviously a big out 3-2 pitch to Moncada to finish the 5th inning. All of a sudden punching out Luis Robert Jr. He can go back to spring training and wear that badge of honor. Punching out big leaguers.
First 2 World Baseball Classic men that you face. You get a foul out from Yohan Moncada and a strikeout of Luis Robert. That's not bad.
I got to say, your confidence goes through the roof as a young player. When you get a chance, you always question, am I good enough? Am I worthy to pitch at the major league level when you're a young player? And all of a sudden, you throw that slider. That's the thing, that secondary pitch. You always compare yourself to other pitchers you watch on TV. And then you throw it, you see a swing and miss. Like, okay, all right, maybe I can do this. It just launches you into the season. It really does.
That's another interesting thing with this Netherlands team is there are so many guys on this roster that are right at the beginning stages of their professional careers, and it's been really kind of a changing of the guard in the generations of Netherlands baseball stars. I mean, there have been some names that you remember and will remember when they enter games. You know, Chiron Martins is on the squad. Mike Bolsenbroek is on the squad, who's been a member of the Dutch national team for a long time. But a lot of names that, if you're an international baseball fan, you will not see, who have moved on from their baseball lives, at least at the Dutch national team level, as Yoenis Cespedes takes the walk. But no Rob Quartermans, Diego Marmarquel is not on this team. Jair Jurgens, who we talked with Hensley Mullins about yesterday, said we had to make a really tough call with Jair. He wanted to be on this team, hasn't pitched regularly much over the last couple of years. So they are in sort of that transition period, and we talked about that with Chinese Taipei as well, and we'll get into that tonight. But a lot of those guys have graduated and moved on to different stages in their lives, and these young players like Eric Mendez now are getting their first cracks at this.
Yeah, you're going to see a couple big prospects, young pitchers, and it is tough. Look, when you're in a situation where, you mentioned Jair Jurgens, where you're on the way out, you're aging out of your current, your world team roster if you're with the Netherlands. But, one thing that Mullins brought up, Mike Harkey, a good friend of his, the Yankees bullpen coach, he was also my pitching coach in 2014 with the D-backs. Just such a massive influence on some of these young players. So you leave spring training, if you're this young man here, Mendez, and all of a sudden you get around a guy like Mike Harkey, who's some of the best bullpen arms in the major leagues, and you get a chance to pick his brain a little bit, spend that time in that bullpen session, what pitch to throw, how to ease yourself into every next pitch with that 12 to 15 seconds. So it's interesting, and then you have to weigh that up with how do you use these guys, because like we said, when you're borrowing these players from organizations, it's tough. There is limitations you have.
Well, you saw that graphic a second ago of just how tilted the experience is in the direction of the position players on this Netherlands roster compared to this young pitching staff. But man, I mean, if you are the Arizona Diamondbacks and you're looking at a prospect and your organization and Eric Mendez, who's going to work against some of the most talented bats in Major League Baseball, and Yohan Moncada and Luis Robert Jr., and then seeing somebody like Yoenis Cespedes right behind him and having success, you really like that for a young guy. Eric Mendez last year pitched at Single A Visalia in the California League. I mean, this guy's 23 years old, matching up with some of the best hitters in baseball. Now he's got Yadier Drake at 1-1. Down the right field line. It's going to be a long, long run for Josh Palacios, and it won't matter.
And that slider of his is a weapon. Obviously, the command, we've talked about that, but you mentioned too, watching a guy like this, if you're a fan, what about if you're a front office? Obviously, you're tuning in. If you're the D-backs front office, you're trying to get something to grasp on some of your young players. Your stock goes through the roof when you get to see an A-ball kid 60 feet away from some of the best Major League players in the game, and they're punching them out.
Look at those minor league numbers for Eric Mendez. Could be ticketed for High A Hillsboro this year as a grounder out to short. Should wrap things up. Man, what hustle there from Yadier Drake, but just a step too slow as he's retired on the ground for the third time today. We are headed to the bottom of the sixth inning. 1-1 game for Cuba and the Netherlands in Taiwan. One of the great early moments in World Baseball Classic history was in 2009 when the Netherlands advanced after knocking out the Dominican Republic in Miami in a classic performance, to borrow a little pun. You recognize that guy? That was Netherlands catcher Kenley Jansen at that time, of course converted into one of the most dominant closers in Major League Baseball. That was really the game and the push for this Netherlands team to get on the international map baseball-wise for even casual international baseball fans. Before, you may have known that they had had some success at various levels. When they knocked out the Dominican Republic with multiple wins over the DR in 2009 to push past the first round, made it to the second round, that was the first time I think that people took notice and said, hold on, what's this? These guys are from where? And they're knocking out the DR in the World Baseball Classic?
One of the challenges they do have too is the fact that they are sprawled all over the world. You know, when you think about obviously the European side of this, the Caribbean side, trying to all get on the same page, get all that talent together. We've talked about this multiple times. This is the team, when you look at guys coming back, making the commitment to be a part of this roster, because of wins like that too, 2009, I guarantee you if there wasn't the same result back then, maybe a tougher recruiting situation for Mullins to bring some of his top players back.
What's amazing as well is that 2009 squad, that was before the dawn of this era of Profar and Bogarts and Gregorius and Scope. And an interesting element to that group is there is a guy on the coaching staff now for the Netherlands, and Eugene Kingsale, who was the hero of that game, and now he gets to be one of the overseers of this next generation of talent for the Netherlands, along with Andrew Jones and Hensley Mullins and everybody else.
I got a chance to see Andrew Jones in the 2013 WBC right here on this field. It was fun watching a guy who I grew up watching. I mean, was he 19 years old when he burst on the scene with the Braves, 96 World Series?
Multiple homers in Game 1 at Yankee Stadium. He surpassed Mickey Mantle on Mickey Mantle's birthday as the youngest player with multiple homers in a World Series game. And look at this staff. When we talk about Hensley Mullins and Andrew Jones, they got a Hall of Famer as the pitching coach in Bert Blyleven.
And you look at this too, and we've talked about this. Sometimes you have that token coach or that, you know, whatever it may be, and what kind of experience do they have coaching at this level. But this is a situation where, first of all, you have one of the best bullpen coaches on the planet helping out some of your young players. You got Mullins, who's been here before. He's obviously a major league coach, but he's a big part of the development, you know, of baseball in the Caribbean, you know, for the Netherlands. And obviously Andrew Jones has been here before. And then some other Hall of Famer you mentioned, Bert someone.
Still a top 10 guy in Major League history in strikeouts, Bert Blyleven. And also the type of guy who, you look at Bert Blyleven and, you know, he's at this stage, 71 years old. Bert Blyleven looks like if he climbed atop a mound right now, he'd probably still give you a few good innings. As a shot through the right side as the First base hit of the day for Jonathan Scope, who's on for the second time. Hit by a pitch to lead off the second, and a single following Gregorius' leadoff walk here in the sixth.
And this is a huge, if not the biggest opportunity for this Netherlands team. All of a sudden, you got runners on. First time you have a runner in scoring position with less than one out. It's a 1-1 game. We've talked about all these storylines, but these are the two favorites right now going head-to-head 1-1 game here in the sixth.
And now a big opportunity for Vladimir Balancin. He's only seen 3 pitches his first 2 trips to the plate, but before we get to that, we'll get a visit to the pitcher's mound from a guy I know you really like a lot. Pedro Lazo is the pitching coach for this Cuba team.
Yeah, I played against Pedro Lazo since I was 18 years old, 2001. He's always been a huge part of this Cuban national program, and we're going to get a pitching change right here.
Yeah, it's not an unorthodox thing for Cuba to do with a pitching change made by the pitching coach. So Cuba's headed to the bullpen. We'll tell you about the new arm when we return to a 1-1 game in Taichung. Slugger Vladimir Balancin will be the first man in to see the right-hander from Las Tunas, Cuba, Carlos Vieira, who takes over on the mound. How about this guy 6 years ago? An all-tournament team member for the Netherlands for what he was able to do in the 2017 Classic.
Yeah, absolutely. Tore it up in 2017. Was really the catalyst of this team getting as far as they did. Vladimir Balancin. This was in the midst of his domination of baseball in Japan. 300-plus home runs in Japan. Still trying to stick around. This is a big platform for a guy like this as well. Trying to showcase to the world that he still has it, still has that bat speed.
Vladimir Balancin, a guy who set the NPB single-season home run mark with 60 home runs, breaking a mark previously held by none other than Sadaharu Oh, the Japanese Babe Ruth, as he's been known throughout his life, the all-time NPB home run leader. Sadaharu Oh, Tuffy Rhodes, Alex Cabrera, who all previously held the all-time record for single-season home runs with 55. Vladimir Balancin, the first man to get a look against Carlos Vieira, who pitched for the Saraperos of Saltillo in the Mexican League.
Wow, this guy has been all over the place. You mentioned the fact he's been in Mexico. 34 years old, been a big part of this national team. Doesn't have the same velocity. He's got some experience, but man, he has got a big assignment right here against Vladimir Balancin. Take a look at the scouting report as well for Vieira. He talked about his time, his experience with this program. The Cuban national team, low 90s fastball. Maybe a struggle to get to 91s, 92s these days as he gets a little bit older, but he was that guy. He was that, talked about Pedro Lazo coming out to make the pitching change. He was always that closer, and then this man right here, Carlos Vieira, took over that closer's role. Here he is, there's a good slider. Balancin. It's one thing about Balantin's game, the big swings and misses. But if you hang a slider right here in the situation, it's going to make you pay.
Ball and 2 strikes on Balancin. Wave and a miss. So Vladimir Balancin coming up empty in 3 trips to the plate, a fly out, a foul out, and now a strikeout, and a big first out of the inning for Carlos Vieira.
He's lost that velocity. We talked about that, but this is where that experience comes in, knowing the fact he's got a guy in Balancin who is going to swing, he can expand, just takes that extra breath, makes that pitch big out right here for Cuba.
So here is Josh Palacios. Carlos Vieira has pitched a lot over the last few seasons, pitching in the Mexican Summer League, the Liga Mexicana for Saltillo over the last 2 years. He's also pitched in the Mexican Pacific Winter League each of the last 2 winter campaigns. Pitched for Los Mochis in 2021-22, for Monterrey in 2022-23. That's what he did in the National Series in Cuba over 7 seasons. Monterrey is a fascinating case study in baseball. They're the only team in Mexico that plays in both the Summer League and the Winter League. So you can be a member of the Sultanes roster in the summer season in Mexico and then play for somebody else in the Mexican Pacific Winter League or vice versa. Put up some decent numbers this winter, 29 2/3 innings and an ERA under 4, which is pretty solid, pitching in a hitter-friendly ballpark as you take a look at Miguel Romero in that bullpen under the third base stands. Josh Palacios flares that one back into the screen.
And you can see Vieira too, just has that presence on the mound, that tempo. The heart rate's down. He's been here before. He's been in these situations with that national team. Big strikeout with that man right there. Valentine now all of a sudden gets back in the count. Has to make some big pitches right here.
Pittsburgh Pirates minor leaguer Josh Palacios waiting at 2-1, and he serves it out into left, and that is a foul ball. We got a little bit of an obstructed view down the left field line into that corner, and Palacios, the way he jetted out of the box, was thinking extra bases like he had just given his team that lead, and instead that thing slices foul.
Man, this game of inches, as cliche as it sounds, but you talk about this in a 1-1 game, you start to get a little bit desperate. You want those balls to drop. You want that good contact to pay off. And all of a sudden he's got a 2-strike count. Has to get out of the middle of the plate.
Two balls, 2 strikes, a 1-1 game with 2 men aboard for the Netherlands. You know, this Netherlands squad has got to be feeling a little bit frustrated with the hit total that they put on the board compared to Cuba, and not as though it's egregious, but they've got 4 of the 5 hits in this game. Cuba only has the RBI double. That one foul tip into the glove, and Nick Lentz asking for help to see if that one skipped into the glove of Lorenzo Quintana. Quintana frustrated, but that'll go as a foul of the dish.
And look, he played 4 games in this pool, so every pitch, every moment matters. This is a really good changeup with 2 strikes. Let's see. Oh, looked like got maybe inside the glove. We're going to do it all over again. Big moment right here in this game. 1-1 here in the 6th.
The way that dirt skips up, they could just ricochet up into the glove of Quintana, but man, Lorenzo Quintana he's the type of guy you want to have back there. He is fighting for every strike and every out, and the pitch is grounded up the middle, and that'll scoot on through for a base hit. Around third comes Gregorius, and the Netherlands has its first lead in the 2023 Classic. It's 2-1 in the 6th.
And we talked about every pitch counting. You look at this, and you do not want that change-up that looked like it could have got inside Quintana's glove to come back and haunt you. You can see right now here at the plate, there's Cuban infield wearing out home plate umpire. This is just enough. We talk about some of these balls sneaking through, getting inside the foul lines. This is a situation for the Netherlands. Just enough to break this game, break this tie open 2-1.
And man, what an awesome feeling for Josh Palacios, who is not a native-born Netherlands roster member, but his mom is from Curacao, and a guy who gets to have this moment, gets to be on the roster with his brother. You were going to wear that today on the broadcast, and I thought, sunglasses might be a little bit much, so you audibled to the 3-piece suit, which I'm proud of, but I am anxious to see you in the Australian version of that later.
Yeah. I did walk down the lobby, and he said, hey, not today, not today. I was like, all right, I'll go up and change, all good. Maybe day 3, who knows? To get a little bit more comfortable, you and me here in the booth, I can bust that out.
So now a chance for Andrelton Simmons. Singled with 2 outs in the 4th inning for his first hit of this 2023 Classic. Jonathan Scope, as you can see, went first to third on the single by Palacios. So the 5th hit of the day for the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Gives today's home team the lead for the first time.
And Vieira, we talked about some of the offensive numbers or the lack of production with Andrelton Simmons this year with last year with the Cubs, but he makes a ton of contact. So Vieira in this situation, yes, you have runners at first and third, 1 out. You have to pitch Andrelton Simmons extremely careful in this situation because enough contact, he has the ability to stay out of the double play. I'm going to keep this a 2-1 game. It's a good at-bat right here. Obviously missing the spots, but for, like I said, a guy like Simmons who is so aggressive, has the ability to lay off some of these pitches.
Leadoff walk for Didi Gregorius. Single that followed from Jonathan Scope. The strikeout of Ballantine. And then the RBI single for Josh Palacios. And Andrelton Simmons will take strike 1 as Vieira gets into the count.
I'll be shocked right here for us here, straight fastball, 3-1. I know it's 3-1, you want to get back in the count. Against a guy like Andrew Simmons, you can do enough for a scouting report knowing he's going to swing.
Simmons able to get that off the end of the bat. Count full of 3-2.
You saw the frustration too from Vieira with that ball that snuck through after the drop third strike with the last at bat. This is where you have to get away from that at bat and say, all right, now I have to do this again. I have to make a huge pitch. I have to keep this team right here 2-1 as this game dwindles down these last innings.
Big pitch coming up here for Carlos Vieira. Chadwick Tromp in the on-deck circle. He's 0 for 2 today. Vieira deals, runner off from first, and a called strike 3, throw to second's not going to be in time. Simmons is retired. Stolen base for Palacios, 2 gone, but second and third now for the 9-hole hitter, the catcher Trump.
Andrelton Simmons, you are kicking yourself right now, anticipating something out of the strike zone. You got a hanging slider over the middle, walking back to the dugout. Again, this is not where this pitch was intended to be, out over the middle of the plate. And I think Andrelton Simmons just kind of surprised a little bit by the fact he got that pitch. Big pitch right there from Vieira. Big out.
Good jump for Josh Palacios as well. Sneak his way into second. So a big opportunity for Chadwick Tromp, who takes ball 1.
See the open base there, 2 out, but Chadwick Tromp, you want to get this out. You do not want to turn this lineup back over to have Profar, Bernardina, Bogarts. This is the guy you want to go after. You have to attack in this situation.
Foul third base side. Trump last year with the Gwinnett Stripers, AAA affiliate in the Atlanta system. 70 games played, OPS of 739 in the International League. He was on this roster 6 years ago. People forget that Netherlands team made it to the semifinal. They lost in an extra innings game to Puerto Rico. They did that all without Didi Gregorius, who left the team due to injury in 2017. Trump was added to the roster in his place. Blown away there on 92 late to try to get to it. He's got a great baseball story as well. A guy who was asked in May of 2013 to catch a bullpen session in front of a pro scout, and the scout liked him so much, ended up signing. Big pitch coming up here to Chadwick Tromp. He wants an extra second to think about it. How often does that happen where, and that's obviously in communication between Quintana and Vieira, how often would you get on a mound and think, I just want to throw this guy out of his rhythm, I'm not dealing a pitch here, I'm going to wait for him to step out?
Not my, I mean, I was a guy, I wanted to get the ball, go for it. You see Quintana, he is fired up behind the plate.
Trump will stay alive.
Knowing how big this pitch is from Vieira. Do it all over again. Well, it's tough in this situation too. We talked about just anchoring, knowing that ball that got through the infield early to get that second run, break this tie. You sometimes mentally you sit on that pitch and you just forget about it. Not forget what you're doing, but you're not focusing on that next pitch. Here's a chance right now for him to throw that slider down and away, get that swing and miss.
Vieira sets 1-2. Flared out to shallow center. On rushing is Robert. That'll drop in front of him in plate 2. In to score easily from third is Scope. Palacios in from second. A 2-out, 2-run single for Chadwick Tromp out of the 9 spot. And the Netherlands breaking things open. It's a 4-1 lead.
In games like this, you'll take it all day long. Not the biggest exit velo, obviously, there from Trump, but with 2 strikes in this situation, you get a slider that just gets too much of the plate. It's a pitch you want to bury. We've seen this from Vieira, just inconsistent with that pitch, that execution, especially with 2 strikes. That's a big second run. When you know how much Cuba is struggling offensively, that's a huge gap.
You know, I like that note. It's obviously not the highest exit velocity, but it gets the job done. It reminds me of something Mike said to us yesterday, talking with him after Italy's workout. He said, you know, I understand that there's a lot with the analytics and stuff that are so much a part of the game now, but in tournament baseball, a lot of this is going to come down to who catches the breaks, who gets those little flares to fall in, who can sneak singles back up the middle or through the 5.5 hole. That's what's so unique about the World Baseball Classic is this is not a 7-game series. And if you can catch the breaks today, if you're the Netherlands or if you're Cuba with a rally, it positions you so much better for the rest of the week. And it's so unique to the Classic compared to what we see throughout the regular season in MLB or NPB or the KBO or wherever.
Yeah, and look, you got to remember, you're playing 4 games, and that at bat from Palacios, obviously, you know, you think about that, the pitch before that, you felt like he had him struck out, and then he's able to sneak one through the infield. That will haunt you, not just you as an individual, but you as a national program, if this stays the way it is and you don't end up advancing to the next round.
1-2 is swung on and missed there, and Jurickson Profar has gone on strikes, but not before the Kingdom of the Netherlands breaks through for 3 runs in the bottom of the 6th. Josh Palacios bouncing one back through the box to give his team the lead, 4-1 game as we head to the 7th. Some really good work on the mound done by the right-handed Arizona Diamondbacks prospect Eric Mendez, and he will give way to fellow right-hander Kevin Kelly, who takes over on the pitcher's mound as we head into the top of the 7th and does so with a lead for the Netherlands for the first time today.
And this is a guy who has been a part of this national program. Hard-throwing right-hander, originally a starting pitcher. And he pitches out of the bullpen. He's been in this situation before. He comes in with a 3-run lead here in the 7th inning.
This Cuba team, for all we've talked about the fireworks inserted in that lineup, especially the top part of the lineup with Moncada and Robert and Cespedes, and we thought Alfredo de España, who was kept out of the lineup today after experiencing some discomfort in his pregame swings. All of that to this point has added up to 1 run on 1 hit through the first 6 innings in this World Baseball Classic.
You felt like it was going to be a long day for this pitching staff from the Netherlands as well.
Especially with the way things started in the first. Tom de Block walked the first 2 men he faced in 3 of the first 4. Got out of the jam with a strikeout of Robert and then a 6-4-3 double play ball off the bat of Lorenzo Quintana. Second inning, it was this guy, Yoelqui Escobar, who got things started for his team with a 1-out walk. He came around 2 batters later to score on Yadiel Mujica's RBI double down the right field line. Since then, just 2 base runners for Cuba, both on walks. Roel Santos with 2 outs in the 5th. Yoenis Cespedes with 1 out in the 6th. Both of those guys left on. One's there on the inside part of the plate to make it 3-2.
And we talk about big moments. Usually you remember some of the big moments later on in the game. You go back to that first inning, the fact that the block was able to get that weak contact with loaded bases. You know, at the time you think about, like, okay, a little bit of weak contact, that's all right. As this ball scoots down the left field line, all of a sudden they're in business.
Fair and extra bases for Guibert.
They heard us talking up there. Talking about that 1 hit.
So Guibert, who scored the first run of the game for Cuba, trying to get his team jump-started here with a leadoff double in the 7th.
Got a good count to hit right here. Just serving that ball to left field. Trying to get some energy back in that Cuban dugout. We've seen this too. We saw this in the qualifiers in September, where all of a sudden that momentum just shifts and you lose that life, that heartbeat. See Trump taking that slow walk. Then you get Kevin Kelly back in a rhythm. There it is, look at that. Staying inside the lines right here, but like I said, 4 games, you have to get that momentum, you got to hold on to it.
Kevin Kelly has pitched in the Dutch major leagues for 8 seasons. Also spent some time in the Italian Serie A, the top-level league in Italy. Kelly most recently in the Honkbal Hoofdklasse with Curaçao Neptunus out of Rotterdam. Just been waiting to drop the honk ball.
Yeah.
First time.
Honk ball.
Last year, 15 appearances, 2 starts, an ERA of 1.23 for Kevin Kelly, 45 Ks in 44 innings. And a guy who's pitched for his national team in a lot of big spots. He pitched in the 2019 European Championships, the Olympic qualifiers later that year in Italy, in Parma and Bologna. Parma, the hometown to Italy's manager, Mike Piazza, who we will see tomorrow. Also pitched in 2019 Premier 12, World Baseball Softball Confederation's top-level international tournament. Over his last 132 1/3 innings in the Dutch Major Leagues, an ERA of 0.88 for Kevin Kelly. Three balls and a strike as he goes to work here on Arubarena. Driven in the air to right. Palacios backpedaling out of the warning track will haul it in. Tagging at second, Guibert easily into third. So man 90 feet away now with one gone. The man who drove in the only run of the game to this point for Cuba, Yadiel Mujica, the second baseman.
Some good hard contact, Tyler, and some good reaction from the fans, but just dying out there. Not only left field, but right field as well. 3-1 pitch, trying to get away. Talk about Kelly getting away with one right there in this situation.
So big spot for Mujica. He went down the right field line with his RBI double in the second.
You can see him slipping into those hitters' counts. 2-0, 3-1. As hard as this is, you feel that panic a little bit. You want to start gripping that bat a little tighter and start chasing pitches, but Cuba has to be patient in this situation.
That'll get one across for Cuba. It's an RBI ground out for Yadiel Mujica as Jonathan Scope puts him away. But Cuba draws one closer, cashing in its second hit of the game for its second run, and it's 4-2 in the seventh.
We'll trade the run for the out, clear those bases any day of the week in this situation. Is 4-1. You know what? 4-2. We're okay. We can get in the 8th inning with a 2-run lead. It's a big out right there,
especially when it all clears the bases and gives you the second out of the inning.
Especially too when you are struggling a little bit with that command. You don't want to see traffic behind you all over the place. You're trying to get in that rhythm. Game one here.
And now you can calm down a little bit if you're Kevin Kelly. Deals the 0-1, gets a bouncer foul first base side. It is a gorgeous day here in Taichung. Temperatures in the mid-70s Fahrenheit. You're a member of a country that uses the metric. This is the imperial system, what I'm using.
The metric system.
What's that conversion?
The more premier
74 Fahrenheit. Give me the conversion.
Listen, please don't put me on the spot with the conversions. Please. I've lived in the United States for 20
how
years,
convenient.
and I still can't convert off the top of my head.
Something in the 20s. I'm going to guess 26. Ready? We're gonna do it right now. 74 degrees, 23.
Oh, look at you. You had that queued up. What are you talking about?
1-2 to Santos. Do it again. So the 7 and 9 hitters, the two guys coming through today for Cuba. Yoelkis Guibert reaching on a leadoff walk a 1-out walk in the second, coming around 2 batters later on Mujica's RBI double. And then a leadoff double for Guibert here in the 4th. RBI ground out for Mujica, and final out of this 7th inning. Off the bat of Roel Santos. Stretch time here in Taichung. It's a 4-2 lead for the Netherlands. Day number one of the 2023 World Baseball Classic in Taichung. We are through 6.5 innings in a really good one between the Netherlands and Cuba. 4-2 our score. The Netherlands breaking through with 3 runs in the bottom of the 6th to take control in this game. There you get a look into that third base dugout. Yoenis Cespedes, designated hitter for this Cuba squad, and offense has been trying to get itself on track today. And that guy you saw a moment ago, Yadiel Mujica, he's been the only one to come through for his team as of yet. RBI double in the 2nd, RBI ground out in the 7th, and the Netherlands trying to add on as we head to the bottom of the 7th inning, and Roger Bernardina will lead things off. He'll be the first one in to face Miguel Romero in the Oakland Athletics system last year.
And this is an exciting arm for the Oakland Athletics. Big fastball. This is a situation where the A's right here facing left-handed hitters, they want him to develop that changeup. That's kind of the bridging the gap to get him to the big leagues. If he can get that changeup over, look at that fastball reaches 100 miles per hour. You're going to see that today. Above average changeup that he's trying to work on, command that pitch, especially left-handers. There it is right there as we take a look. 87, filthy, good arm speed. But Tyler, I got to say, just being back here, we talked about being back on the international stage, World Baseball Classic. It's been 6 years. We got a chance to do the qualifiers back in September. And this is the biggest one by far when you're talking about from 06 all the way till now.
The thing that's impressed me most about the build-up to this 2023 Classic is Bernardina yanks that one foul, is the way Major League Baseball and the World Baseball Classic have continually given us this drip feed of, oh, here's this commit who's going to play for the U.S. Here's this player who's going to play for Mexico. Here's this player who's going to be on this Chinese Taipei squad. The constant drumbeat of the Classics coming back has been so much fun over the last 6 months or so. And you and I were so lucky to get a chance to do the qualifiers in Regensburg, Germany, and in Panama City last year. And that really just felt like such an appetizer. We got done. What did we end up doing? 18 games in 10 days, I think, was what we finally ended up doing. By the end of that, we could have done 18 more games in the next 4 days. We were so locked in and could not get enough of those 2 sets of teams that Bernardina places that one into center. And now to be here on day 1 in Taichung, this is just the start of a whole bunch of fun to come over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, it really is. Just seeing that World Baseball Classic logo again. Here's that changeup. Talk about this. Yes, it is filthy, 87, 88, but with 2 strikes, you want to have that plus come in, get that pitch down below the strike zone to left-handed hitters, and that's going to be the difference getting him to the major league level. But yeah, just seeing that World Baseball Classic logo back, that the paint on the field. You know, you're talking about back at the qualifiers, and like you said too, just the anticipation, watching Mike Trout all of a sudden, Team USA, Nolan Arenado, then all of a sudden the Dominican Republic team, who they get started in just a couple days. This man right here, Xander Bogaerts, fresh off an 11-year deal with the Padres, and he's like, nope, big priority number 1 for him in the month of March, playing in the World Baseball Classic.
One of my favorite things about the Classic from edition to edition is the guys who maybe you don't know a lot about, and we're lucky enough to get to bring you some of the stories of the guys that you may not know a lot about. But this Chinese Taipei squad that we're going to see tonight is loaded with as much talent as I would say we've ever seen on a Chinese Taipei team. I mean, we got MVPs, finalists for the MVP awards, pitcher of the year, rookie of the year, all kinds of talent on that team. And they're going against a Panama squad that was more dominant in the qualifiers than any team we saw in either Regensburg or Panama City. They only needed 2 games, blew their way through the qualifier, punched their ticket to come here, and they're kind of flying under the radar. Get to bring you that game tonight, 7 o'clock local time, which is 6 a.m. Eastern time in the United States. As Miguel Romero dealing with a leadoff base runner, Roger Bernardina's second hit places him at first, and now a 3-0 count on Xander Bogaerts. Bernardina bluffs, and that one's grooved in there to make it 3-1. That is some easy heat at 93. If you, at the dawn of your career, Ryan, if you would have seen a guy throw like that, pump in 93 with 0 effort, I mean, that at that time would have been almost mind-blowing. Nowadays, it's just, it's par for the course with pretty much every arm across baseball.
Yeah, I mean, it's the month of March, too. Romero, he can get it up there as well in regards to velocity, but everyone throws 95 plus. That is for sure. That kind of used to be the benchmark. It's like when you're a kid coming up, oh, can you hit 9-0, 90? Now, all of a sudden, the game has definitely changed. Like you mentioned, too, like a team like Chinese Taipei tonight you're going to see, or even Panama, some guys who you're just not quite familiar with, and they are so fun to watch because of some of the stuff they show.
Miguel Romero, each of the last 2 seasons, time with AAA Las Vegas Aviators in the Pacific Coast League. Swing and a miss there from Bogarts, but Bernardina will swipe second. So 1 out, but a man in scoring position now as Bernardina alertly moves himself up 90 feet.
Talked about the month of March. Hitters are just a tick behind when you're talking about timing and being at game speed. Xander Bogaerts, like I said, that's a pitch, and we've seen this often throughout this game in the first 6 or 7 innings. A couple hanging sliders, a fastball middle. He simply will not miss that pitch in the month of June.
So 1 out, a potential insurance run out there in scoring position for Didi Gregorius. Walked and scored in the 6th inning. RBI single to get the Netherlands on the board with 2 outs in the 3rd. They take strike 1.
You see a lot of pitching matchups playing these last couple innings. We're going double barrel.
Nakel Cruz on the left side of your screen and Yudis Reyes on the right side. Nakel Cruz, a guy who on the international landscape just very recently was making a name for himself. He was the ace of his national team squad at the U23 Baseball World Cup here in Taiwan just about 6 months ago. 7 innings pitched, struck out 8. Only gave up 1 earned run. Cuba trying to keep this thing tight. Get that offense time to come alive as Gregorius spins out of the way of that pitch up and in.
This time a fastball too. Up towards the face of Didi Gregorius, getting out of the way. Romero, that command starts to elude him a little bit.
Two one coming from Romero. 3-1.
Look at those unis, Tyler. I mean, you used to see a lot of orange from the Dutch team. We go straight white with the pinstripes.
We talked about this yesterday with Hensley Mullins, what this Dutch National Baseball Federation has done in generating interest in this national team program. The uniforms, the logo, the change to the name, the Kingdom of the Netherlands instead of just the Netherlands, that's been part of it. And it was interesting talking with Hensley Mullins about it because he's such an old school guy as Gregorius swings and can't get a piece. But he was so embracing of what they've done to generate that interest. The Netherlands, for my money, has some of the best social media content of any team on the international baseball landscape. They've got a content creator, Louis J. Sanders, and if you're not following the Honk Ballers on social media, give them a follow, give Louis a follow. The video content, the photos, the slideshows, the edits. He does incredible work for this team. And it really is all about, we're in this era now where it's not just enough to throw your team out there, play some good ball, and hope that people get interested. You have to have all these different elements. You got to sell some merchandise. You got to put some cool stuff on Instagram and on TikTok and on Twitter. You have to be a fully complemented organization of all of those pieces in order to be successful. And I don't know if anyone in international baseball is doing it as well as the Netherlands is doing it right now.
Yeah, you got to get those kids involved too. I know coming from Australia, there's Team Australia about to take off in Japan. a lot of kids are watching. You want to get those kids involved, invested in the national team.
Gregorius out to second. Mujica there. Let's take a look around this 2023 World Baseball Classic at some of the news and note items. Tomorrow, Ryan's native Australia will kick off Pool B in Tokyo against Korea. The United States will get rolling behind Captain Mike Trout on March 11th in a fascinating matchup against Great Britain, a team that we saw qualify in Regensburg. And then Pool D, you talk about the group of depth, you talk about the FIFA World Cup, and the one group every time out that seems like, how is anybody going to advance from that? Take a look at that Pool D group in Miami. That is going to be as electric a baseball atmosphere as you will see anywhere. And the talent on those rosters is shocking in Miami and Pool D.
It's easy to get caught up in certain rosters, but then all of a sudden you're like, oh, whoops, Venezuela, whoops, Puerto Rico.
Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
Pool D, those two squads, along with Nicaragua, which we saw qualify out of Panama last fall, and Israel, which had such an impressive run in 2017, of course. Pool B, along with Australia and Korea, the host nation Japan, China, and the Czech Republic, who we saw qualify from Regensburg. And Pool C is going to be fascinating. The United States, obviously the heavy favorite there, but Colombia, really good talent on that team. Canada and Mexico, really good talent on both of those squads. And that Great Britain team, which was so much fun to watch in Regensburg and has added some additional pieces. And Scope swings and can't get a piece on 1-1, it's 1-2. There is just not a boring group in this Classic in 2023. Storylines galore, talent galore. Like we've been saying all afternoon, we may have the most evenly matched 1 through 5 teams of any of those groups here in Taichung. Swing and a miss. And Jonathan Scope will send things to the 8th. A good one here in Taichung, the Netherlands doubling up Cuba 4-2 as we go to the 8th. The World Baseball Classic has been a launching point for a lot of talent across this sport over the last 17 years, but maybe no more talent than from Cuba, which has produced all of these future Major League superstars that really announce themselves on the world stage in the Classic.
Yeah, I mean, it's this one window. You see Jose Abreu, Chapman, Gurriel. That one window, that one little glimpse, you get to take a look at it. Obviously a national team that you hear so much about, but you don't quite get a chance to see them. And then you get a chance to see them against the best players on the planet. We've mentioned a few of them already.
New arm into the game for the Kingdom of the Netherlands as we head into the top of the 8th inning is the right-hander Franklin van Herp. Van Herp is a unique guy on this roster in that he's not from Curacao, he's not from Aruba, he's not from the Netherlands mainland in Europe. He's actually from Sint Maarten. Guy who pitched in the Dutch majors, Honkbal Hoofdklasse last year, 9 games, 3-0 record, a 1.42 ERA. And he comes on to face the gauntlet of this Cuban lineup, 2-3-4 with Yohan Moncada leading things off and still in search of his first hit in the Classic.
Yeah, Franklin van Herp coming out of Indie Ball this year in the Atlantic League. And I mean, talk about a platform. We saw the Cuban players. We talked about Valentin. Now here's a chance for a guy like Van Herp to prove to the world, when you're from a scouting point of view, that you can hang with the best players, especially with that big breaking ball of his. That big sweeping slider, trying to get some outs. Crucial outs here in the 8th inning.
Grounder over to first as Gregorius, dealing with a tough couple of hops, able to hustle it to the covering reliever Van Herp. 1 up, 1 down here in the 8th.
Franklin van Herp has been in and out of professional baseball. We talked about Indie Ball last year. A couple stints throughout the minor leagues, but scouting report, long, loose arm. We saw that big breaking ball just get kind of roll over. It's a heavy fastball with some late life. Big opportunity for him.
Van Herp, another guy who's pitched in some big international spots. Pitched in Premier 12 in 2019, pitched in the Europe and Africa Olympic qualifier a little bit earlier in 2019, back in September of that year. Luis Robert Jr., who has started his day with 3 straight Ks. I don't think you would have anticipated that on day number 1 in his 2023 Classic debut. 1-1 count here in the 8th. Fooled badly there. A lot of movement on that breaking pitch from Van Herp. 1-2.
That's filthy. That's a filthy pitch. Love the sequencing too. You saw the pitch, it got more of the plate, the pitch prior to it. Then all of a sudden he expanded the zone. Another foot out. Get one of the best raw talents in the game.
Robert crushes this one into the alleyway in left center. That's extra bases, 1 hop off the wall. Luis Robert Jr., welcome to the Classic. His first base hit, a 1-out double in the 8th.
This is the difference. Before I could even get the thought out, talking about that breaking ball, leaving the pitch out over the plate with 2 strikes. Guy with one of the best exit velocities, top 5% in the game, Luis Robert, is going to make you pay for it. That's just a situation you're just trying to do too much or do just a little bit more than the pitch prior to that. A big league hitter like Luis Robert Jr. will make you pay for it.
Man, what a start to this 2023 Classic, as in the top of the 8th inning, Yoenis Cespedes will bat as the potential tying run for his home country. First pitch to him, down and away for ball 1. And you're feeling good if you're the Netherlands. 4 runs on 7 hits against some really talented arms on the other side. You've limited Cuba to 3 hits, but all of a sudden, dealing with the tying run at the plate, one of the most dynamic bats in baseball over especially the early part of his career in the big leagues.
Yeah, he got away with a pitch right there. Fastball, middle of the plate, 91 miles per hour.
Broken bat, bleeder foul, third base side. Cespedes will go get a new implement. Andrelton Simmons making a kid's day down the left field line.
There's a big pitch about to come from Franklin Van Herp. Has a little bit of extra time to process the moment here as well with that broken bat. So that situation is so hard not to try and do too much. Try and grunt through that slider as best you can, but just stay on top of that pitch. Get a swing and miss. Big moment right here. The Netherlands team up 2 runs.
I remember this from Germany and Panama. You and I both, in these moments, go from sitting to standing when the tension ratchets up a little bit. Ball and 2 strikes on Cespedes. 0 for 1 with a couple of walks today. 2-2.
Good pitch. It's a tough situation too. I mean, the whole city of Taiwan knows he's going to throw, especially that guy right there, knows they're going to throw that looping big breaking ball. You just have to keep executing even if you miss that pitch. Cannot give in this situation.
Franklin Van Herp, a product of Florida International University, trying to get his team on the track to Miami, and a grounder out to short. High throw there from Bogaerts, but big frame for Didi Gregorius hauls it in. 2 gone in the 8th.
That's a big out. Saw plenty of the plate, but just getting weak contact. Now all of a sudden you can take your breath. You've got 2 outs. Getting to the bottom part of that Cuban lineup.
A couple of longtime American League stars giving each other a little hug over there at second base. Bogaerts and Luis Robert.
Cespedes is just missing. Probably feel that frustration. Wanting to get back to that prime Cespedes right now.
Love that reaction. Yeah. Franklin Van Herp, almost like he was thanking the mound. So 2 gone. And it brings up the catcher, Lorenzo Quintana. If you weren't with us for the early part of the broadcast today, and you're wondering where the big guy Alfredo Despaigne is in this lineup, he is not in the lineup today, and we don't anticipate is available today. España with some leg discomfort prior to the start of the World Baseball Classic and felt not right taking his swings this morning. So Armando Johnson not able to slot him into the heart of this order. And great story from Matt Monaghan on MLB.com about Alfredo España, all the success that he has had in the World Baseball Classic. As that one into the dirt, Tromp able to get to it, back in behind Robert, got him at second. What a job by Chadwick Tromp. Luis Robert is looking over to the third base dugout to try to get some help, and they will review this. Remember, Cuba challenged what was initially ruled to be a hit by pitch with Xander Bogaerts at the plate early in this game. They were successful with that challenge, so they retained the challenge. And Armando Johnson wants another look at this to see if he can save this threat in the eighth.
And this is just Luis Robert Jr., the big leaguer, just pressing too much, just trying to force the issue. Seeing that ball in the ground, just trying to get that extra base. He wants to get another look. It's going to be close.
That is very close. Robert contending he got that right foot in before the tag. I think that tag is on him just before the right spike gets the bag at second. That is a great job by Chadwick Tromp, though, to block that. And a great job by Jonathan Scope on the receiving end.
Ooh, maybe he might be in there.
Reverse angle is a great look.
Even if you're 50% sure in the 8th inning, 4-2 game right here with runners in scoring position, you still have to challenge this. Pointing down to his shoes. I'm not sure. See if they get that angle on the replay.
May be back in time. This is a huge spot. And out at second base is the call on the review. So Luis Robert Jr. is retired as he is nabbed straying off of the second base bag by Chadwick Tromp and Jonathan Scope. And that sends us to the bottom of the 8th, 4-2, Netherlands out in front. Top of the 8th inning in a 2-run game, a 1-out double for Luis Robert Jr. Still at second with 2 gone, and back-picked at second base by Netherlands catcher Chadwick Tromp, and a great job by Jonathan Scope to reel in a high throw, slap the tag down. That is a massive out.
It is huge. I mean, you look at this on both sides of the ball right here. Obviously, Luis Robert Jr. just trying to press just a little bit. You know you're flat offensively as a team, and you're trying to just force the issue, get that extra bag, but you cannot, in a situation like this, down 2 runs, afford, obviously, to be that third out second base.
New arm into the game for Cuba as we head here into the bottom of the 8th inning. The left-hander Livan Moinello will take over on the pitcher's mound. Moinello, a member of the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks in Nippon Professional Baseball, the Pacific League in Japan.
And another closer, too. I mean, look at some of this stuff. You're talking 94, can touch 98 with the fastball. He throws a split as well. The big pitch for him is that slider. He can change angles with a different tilt on that pitch. Just easy 97 right there from the left side. Yeah, he's one of those guys you look at and you think, man, what could this guy do if he got to the big leagues? Look at this, international prospects. See number 5 right there. See pitching in Japan, but could you see him pitching in the United States?
And a guy who will probably be seeing in game number 2 for Cuba, also on that list, Radel Martinez. Another Chunichi Dragons prospect. And man, you want to see an electric arm. You hear so much about what Shohei Ohtani is going to bring in terms of his focus in Japan. Roki Sasaki, the top guy on that roster, or on that list, I should say, of the top prospects in the World Baseball Classic. There are few pitching prospects that have ever come out of Japan as highly touted as Roki Sasaki, who is still, I believe, just 21 years old and is a phenom. Last year, nearly pitched back-to-back perfect games. He threw 17 straight perfect innings, finished off one perfect game, got through 8 innings in the next one, and was lifted by his manager due to pitch restrictions and the limitations, not wanting to overexert him in that second straight game. Roki Sasaki is the next big thing. You want to see the next big thing from Japan? That's what's coming up next. As you see some Tokyo Yakult Swallows fans. One NPBer facing another, and Ballantine out to left, drives it well, and back at the wall, Santos is there to pull it in for out number 1. Man, Vladimir Ballantine was positive he had gotten all of that, and it dies out there in left field like we were told happens in this ballpark, and a loud first out in the 8th.
That really was. Again, we've seen plenty of this. That ball gets enough of that launching. You see the wind blowing in and to the left. Ballantine got a pitch to hit to a fastball middle. Guess right. The barrel to that ball, at the very least, thought it was gone. Look at that reaction.
That is what the MLB field guru Murray Cook told us, that the ball just does not travel very well to left and left center here, and the wind typically will blow things out to right. Now, when this game started, the wind was blowing almost straight out to dead center field, but everything that's gone to right has died. We haven't had anything leave the ballpark yet today. Man, Ballantine thought he had that way out of here. He profiled a little bit as he left the batter's box, and that died on the warning track.
And is he thinking right now, is he thinking, hey, if this is 5 years ago, that ball is clearing those seats? The thought does go through your head, I promise you. As you're wrapping up your career, you're thinking to yourself, man, imagine this was 3 to 5 years ago. Or 6 years ago, we saw it, obviously, in 2017. We're already showing those numbers, some of the damage he did. He'll get there. He'll get that bat speed back.
You know, and the other thing he might be thinking, too, is he's playing in his old stomping grounds in Nippon Professional Baseball in a dome. That ball's probably out of here as well.
No doubt.
Little piece of baseball trivia here in Taiwan. They are in the process of finishing a dome up in Taipei called the Taipei Dome. Construction started several years ago, was stopped for a little while. They're on the verge of putting the finishing touches on that.
I'll tell you what, you can see him joking about it, probably thinking the same thing we were just having a conversation about, laughing with his teammates. I'll tell you right now, that conversation, as you take a look at the wind, like you mentioned, blowing into right field, but that conversation's a lot easier when your team's up 4-2 game 1 here in the pool play. I'll tell you what, you're down a couple of runs and you hit that ball, you feel like you got it, like, oh man. Tough to stand there and watch it.
Shadows creeping across home plate here in Taichung, as tough pitch to lay off there, and a nice job by Josh Palacios to do so. Puts the count full of 3-2.
I got to say, I am a little surprised to see Moinello pitching in this situation. Yes, he is the closer. Remember, there is the pitch restrictions. It's a situation where he goes back-to-back days. All of a sudden, he's going to be down. But, you know, a game like this, 4-2, just cannot take anything off.
Big hack and miss there from Palacios.
This is just not fair. Left on left. 96. When you're trying to keep in the back of your mind that big breaking ball, the 3,000 RPM breaking ball he has in the back pocket, all of a sudden you just get blown away by this fastball.
So 2 gone now, and base is empty for Simmons.
Talked about that, the changeup, big weapon. Left on right, he will see that changeup more, but left on left, you will see the breaking ball. He does change angles, different tilts. Looks more like a bigger breaking ball, then he gets a sharper one. There's that changeup.
That is a nasty change of speeds. You know, I got to ask you before we go to the 9th, what's your thought on the all-blue look for Cuba?
I like it. I do, I like it. You see the, I don't know what you call it, where it fades from red to blue. I wasn't expecting that. We have seen plenty of red, obviously, from them over the years.
It's called a gradient.
Thank you. Gradient, that was the word I was thinking of. I knew that, I promise. Just like I know how to convert the Celsius to Fahrenheit, I promise. Just can't put me on the spot.
It was cool. We talked yesterday with Armando Johnson about these new uniforms. That company that produces these Team Cuba uniforms called Teammates International. They're based out of Italy. And I asked him about, you know, that red and blue. We've seen You look back on that 2006 World Baseball Classic footage, Cuba in the all-red uniforms. The big drive off the bat of Simmons to left, and another one that's going to hang up there and die, and an easy 8th inning of work for Roel Santos as 2 massively loud fly balls die out there before the wall, and Simmons able to share a laugh with his guys as they will carry a 2-run lead to the 9th, trying to close out a day 1 victory. This copyrighted telecast is presented by authority of World Baseball Classic Incorporated and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form, and the accounts and descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without express written consent. Top of the 9th inning inside Jung as the Kingdom of the Netherlands looks to close out a Day 1, Game 1 victory over Cuba back at Taichung's Intercontinental Baseball Stadium, alongside the former Major Leaguer and 2-time Team Australia World Baseball Classic participant Ryan Rowland-Smith. My name is Tyler Mon. Ryan crushing me for my performance at the Hotel Buffet last night. A little offended. But as we head into the top half of the 9th inning, new arm into the game. Wendell Florian taking over. The Willemstad Curaçao native will try to close out win number 1 for the Netherlands.
Well, I was talking about both our performance at the buffet, but thanks. Let's talk about Wendell Florian instead. But listen, this guy, you talk about a guy who is in a situation right now. This is a huge game. The 2 favorites, Cuba, Netherlands, coming into this. The pitching has been outstanding. I said this is the one question mark. What are you going to see from these guys? He's a little shaky to begin with. The Florian, he has closed out games before, but this puts the Netherlands in such a good spot. You cannot forget, it's 4 games. You knock off the other favorite, you're sitting pretty. Big, big moment for him.
Yeah, a win on day number 1 is a titanic accomplishment, especially when this is the matchup. The 2 teams that may be the favorites coming into Pool A play, squaring off in game number 1. I mean, what an opener for us to get a chance to have. Wendell Florian getting that bouncer over to Simmons. That's like he doesn't even have to think about it.
No, just straight bare hand. And look, watching him, I got to say, like, you're going to have to question who is going to play shortstop. You see Florian with a big strikeout in this situation. Getting down to the Gold Glover, Andrelton Simmons, how smooth he is, how relaxed this infield is right now, especially behind some of the pitching we've seen. Love this, man. Florian is not scared at all. None of these bullpen arms attacking hitters in these late innings.
So 1 gone, and that'll bring up Yadir Drake. The crazy thing is this Cuba offense has been largely held at bay, but you get a bloop and a blast. This is a tie game here in the 9th. First, you got to get somebody aboard, as Yadir Drake has not been able to do that as of yet. 0 for 3. Groundouts to 3rd, short and short. Guy who also saw time in the Mexican League with the Leones, the Yucatan, last year. Wendell Florian with the Tigres of Quintana Roo. There's a great storyline about Wendell Florian and his relationship with Netherlands veteran Jair Jurgens, and we'll probably get into that more as we see Wendell Florian throughout this tournament. But 27-year-old has been really mentored by a guy who had a ton of success in his career in Jair Jurgens. 2 gone, another ground out for Yadir Drake.
And Cuba just not getting anything done. See that man right there, Vladimir Valentin, enjoying this. And he thought he hit a ball to the moon. I think had a parachute on out there in left field. A lot of smiles in that dugout. You can start to breathe a little bit. All the anticipation, the time spent for that man right there. Hensley Mullins building this roster. I mentioned Jair Jurgens, keeping guys like that, making those tough decisions, keeping him off the roster. Traveling to Amsterdam. First time he said since 2014 to get amongst some of his guys, and here you are sitting with a 2-run lead, 2 out against Cuba.
Bouncing ball back up the middle, snared at short. Bogarts the 360, and the Netherlands opens things up with a day 1 win.
And that day 1 win, you mentioned how important it is. All smiles in the dugout, on the field. Your confidence, your energy just goes through the roof. Anchored by that man right there, Xander Bogaerts.
What a start in this 2023 World Baseball Classic. And we are just getting started. Tonight at 7 o'clock local time, 6 a.m. Eastern time back in the United States. Don't miss our continuing coverage of Pool A from Intercontinental Baseball Stadium here in Taichung, as after a 14-year hiatus from the tournament, Panama returns to take on hosts Chinese Taipei. Mariano Rivera will be here. Ryan Rowland-Smith will be here. And so will I. For Ryan Rowland-Smith, my name is Tyler Mon, saying goodbye for now as the Netherlands takes down Cuba and a matchup of Titans to kick off the 2023 World Baseball Classic. Tonight at 7 o'clock local time, Panama, Chinese Taipei. We'll talk to you then. Thanks for watching this presentation of the 2023 World Baseball Classic.